It's 2025, it's the MTGO Creator Showdown, and I am Nathan Zamora. If you know me from the digital world, which is the only place I exist, that's admirable. But I'm here with Corey, who's an actual person, Corey Baumeister, of course. I'm very glad he's joining me from this one. Corey, how are you doing today?
I am real. I'm pretty sure I'm existing right now, and I'm doing great, man. I'm excited to do some casting with you, and I'm really excited to see what Aether Drift does to a standard format. This set looks sweet. I'm ready to do some drifting and exhausting. It's going to be a blast, man.
It's brand new to this standard as well. Yes. It's a very powerful standard, which means you have to have a very powerful set as we come into this as well. Let's take a look at how this standard is laying out, what other players are going to be playing today, because in this one, we have some cash that's up for grabs. They're just going to be playing a standard format style, though. A Swiss pairing, a double elimination, 6 rounds for a best of 3. Just a sideboard that's going to be up for grabs that's going to be playing here today. We have a lot of tournaments for the MTGO Creator Showdown that are planned out this year, though. 10 tournaments that are going to be happening here in 2025. They're not all going to be standard, though, which means you're going to want to keep your eye out. A lot is going to be up for grabs as we come on out in this one. So what is up for grabs here today as we come into the prizing? What are they going to be playing for as they play in this double elimination? First place, $1,250 is going to be given out after 6 rounds here. Corey, that's a lot of money after 6 rounds of playing standard here today.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is a lot of cash to be able to win when you're just sitting at home in your pajamas, playing some new standard, only having to go 6-0 to take it down as well. And I got to say, Nathan, I've played in 3 of these events. This is my first time casting one of them. I just lost so many times. I'm like, you know what? I got to give it up. I got to try to get into the booth and I'd be able to try to get something out of this, because I've went 3-2 3 different times, getting right outside of the money. It is a very, very tough tournament.
That's what you do now when you're washed. You just decide you're going to give it up and come here and talk instead.
I've been washed for years, and here I am.
I'm glad to be joining you finally here in this one as well. I'm glad that you're here today watching this one, but I hope that you stick around later as well, because we're going to be giving something away for you too. There's going to be a mic that's up for grabs, a Beacon mic. You can head over to beacon.gg to learn more about it and what they have available for you. But later on today, if you're in Twitch and you're in the US or Canada, you're going to be eligible to win a Beacon mic. We're going to have a few more details later on. Head over to beacon.gg. Check out what they have there for you available, and if you're here later on, you can win one of those here today. For Corey's top cards coming into this tournament, though, Corey, you picked 3 cards coming into this one that you wanted to see that were important for this one. Tell me why you picked these 3 cards.
Yeah, so these are really the pillars of standard going into Aether Drift. We have This Town Ain't Big Enough decks that are most of the time this Dimir Bounce House, Esper Pixie. Those are kind of the go-to This Town Ain't Big Enough decks. Kind of the decks to beat at the moment. Then we have our aggressively slanted decks, which are going to be the Emberheart Challengers, all these mice decks that are going to be trying to squeak out victories. I know, I had to do it. A little bit of a mouse pun here. Those are going to be your go-to aggressive decks of the format. And then we have Up the Beanstalk, which is our go-to control decks, trying to play most of the time in domain, leyline binding, stuff like this. This kind of paints our rock, paper, scissors-ish metagame, where This Town Ain't Big Enough decks are good against the Emperor Challenger decks, the Challenger decks are good against the Up the Beanstalk decks, and the Up the Beanstalk decks are good against This Town Ain't Big Enough. But of course, standard is so close that these percentages are still very small.
It feels like right now, the cards individually in standard are some of the most powerful that they have ever been. And while the decks because of that, end up being some of the most powerful we've ever had in standard, it doesn't necessarily mean that standard is the most powerful it's ever been. Now, it doesn't mean the opposite of that. But right now, it feels like because the cards are so powerful, the decks are very powerful, but that it means there's so many powerful decks as a result of that as well. Like, it feels like every single time I go and look for decks that there's, 15 or 20 different decks I have to pick from because of that. Like, when I go and look at some of the most played cards that are there right now, the cards that are at the top are the best cards that are at the top. I mean, every single time I go and look at some of the most played cards that are there, so we can take a look at what's in this tournament for the most played cards. Every single time, there are those core cards that are gonna be the building blocks of what you have there as well. It's like removal feels like it is the pillar of what you want to have in this tournament is we can take a look at the most played cards in this event as well. Like, how can I look at a red deck and not want to play Torch the Tower? With the creatures that go to the graveyard, they do something when they go to the graveyard. When I look at Storm Chaser's talent, which is going to make a prowess creature, when I look at this town ain't big enough, which is going to put something back in my hand and in their hand, I go, Storm Chaser's talent, that's a great card to put back in my hand. Oh, your biggest thing, I can put that back in your hand. How could I play these colors and not play these cards?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is the most played cards for a reason, and it's almost always removal that you see as the most played cards in tournaments. It's been cut down for a very long time. Right now it is Torch the Tower. Now these are just exactly what Standard is about, is how are players bringing cards to kill your opponent's creatures. And whenever I'm trying to build a deck in an early metagame, aka when a new set just comes in, I look at the removal first and I try to find a hole in the removal and think, okay, there's cut downs, killing a lot of small creatures. Torch the Tower kills small creatures. Nowhere to Run deals with 3 toughness or less creatures. Maybe some creatures that have 4 toughness or more are kind of the way to go. But that being said, this town ain't big enough is going to be one of the most played cards in the most played deck, and that bounces the big creatures. So that's kind of the squeeze that we're seeing in Standard right now. And of course, Storm Chaser's talent not being a removal spell, but it just shows how amazing this card is as being one of the most played cards here. Just because if you can combo this with This Town Ain't Big Enough, a lot of these decks just never run out of steam. You get to, well, bounce this, bounce the talent, then play the talent, level up level 2, get This Town Ain't Big Enough, and you have this endless string of value, which is just very appealing in a format like Standard.
So I just need a 4 toughness hex-proof creature that's cheap.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, well, that's totally available in this format. Every single deck has one of those. As I was talking about earlier, though, with the most played decks, there are so many decks in Standard right now. And while they're still going to be functioning off of a lot of the same cards, you can use a lot of different strategies with those. Coming into this tournament alone, I mean, we're talking, we had less than 40 players in this tournament. We have so many different decks in this tournament. There was like, what is it, 20 different decks in this tournament? Is that what it was?
I think it was something like that, which is always awesome. You know, you see some of these creator showdowns where maybe if we're late into a Standard format, then you see just like, okay, half of the field is playing X, you know, because it's just the deck that's just so popular. But right when it's the new Standard format here, Nathan, a lot of people want to try the new things. And I will say it, you know, I don't want to be the Debbie Downer. Most of the time, those new decks don't end up being better than, let's say, you know, we look at the most played decks here being Pixie in the middle. Usually those decks are better, but man, Nathan, whenever one of these new decks that nobody's playing and it's like a one of dominates the tournament, then you're like, okay, this is awesome.
It always can happen is the thing.
Yeah.
You know, every single time you look at it and it's like, sure, I think the Esper Pixie deck is going to be the best deck. It still isn't going to be this massive edge. We're not looking at Pixie is going to beat you 90% of the time or something ridiculous.
For sure.
We're looking at this Esper Pixie deck, you know, we're looking at you know, a 4 to 9% edge, which 9% is ridiculous, right? But a 4% edge isn't as ridiculous. And we're talking that's if the other decks aren't refined, that it's going to have an edge like that. But
totally
when
agree
I look
with you. Oh, sorry to interrupt you there, Nathan, but totally agree with you. Standard is about these minor edges. There isn't many matchups where it's just like, okay, this has a 70-30%, you know, matchup or anything crazy like that. Now, one of the more polarizing decks that we are going to be seeing is, you know, highlighted by Knight Errant of Eos, this Convoke style deck. That's a deck that's like very, very good against certain decks and really, really bad against other decks. You know, most of the time if they have sweepers, like you're going to see with Herd Migration decks that are going to play Sunfall and stuff like that, then they struggle quite a bit. But man, if you play against like a Dimir mid-range deck and you're playing this Convoke strategy and they're trying to kill your battlefield by going, go for the throat this, or, you know, -2/-2 to that, you're just going to get run over really aggressively. And then some of our other most played decks, and I think your favorite one, Nathan, is Questing Druid and those style of Gruul decks as well.
Ooh, yeah, Questing Druid is absolutely my style of card. I mean, this is picking up on the old style of like the old the Miracle Grow decks that we used to play back in the day when we had 4 of Gush in some of the formats that we used to play. And, you know, this card is picking up on both of those, where like I loved the mono red style decks, and this is also adopting that draw 2 plus the growing style of creature. Talking about though, where you're talking
I'm
about
sorry,
adopting.
Nathan, I got to interrupt you. Did you say gush back in your day? I mean, back in your day, like, how's your knees at this point? Are they sore? Is your back starting to go out? I feel like that was just years and years ago.
No, I'm sorry. I don't know what you're talking about at this point. I couldn't quite hear you. I think
Do you need me to speak up, Nathan? Nathan, can you hear me?
Well, I wanted to touch on the point that you mentioned earlier. I think I remember it if I heard you correctly. It's been quite a while since I heard. Maybe I don't remember you correctly. You were talking about the edges that come in and some of the decks that just they're trying to do one thing and you're either running into it and having a massive edge or you're not. You mentioned with Convoke and running into sweepers or not. Yeah. I feel like Domain is really the deck that adopts this edge of you're either going to beat decks because you have the right strategy or you're simply not going to. Domain, I feel like, is the deck that kind of actively adopts that strategy where you have so many expensive cards and you have cards that are trying to do specific things. If you run into the right matchups, you're going to crush them, and if you don't, you get crushed.
Yeah, and some people love that when they pick a standard deck. They're like, and if you metagame correctly, those are the kind of decks that are going to be amazing, right? Like, if you anticipate there's going to be a lot of slow-ish creature decks, you know, play the Domain deck, play the deck with the sweepers, but then you run into, you know, maybe some control decks, some slower Domain or Dimir decks that have a bunch of counter spells, and you have a bad time, you know? So those are the type of decks that players play if that is their style, right? Like, I'm a Domain player. I want to play big stuff. I don't want to attack and block. You know, for me, I'm more of the Pixie style gamer. I want to play something that has game against absolutely everything. But, you know, it's what people like. And it's standard's pretty wide open, like you were saying. You can do whatever you want.
Well, thankfully for you, we're going to be having a matchup that's similar to that as we roll into our first broadcast matchup here of the day, which is going to be round 3 of this one. Yep. Our first broadcast match today is going to be rolling into round 3. Again, they're playing 6 rounds. We're going into round number 3. We're going to be showing you a match that's going into round number 3. That's the last time I'm going to iterate it, but I want to make sure that you know about it because for me, I can't remember it because, again, I'm old as hell.
The dementia.
Corey said it a bunch of times now.
The dementia.
It's just the way it's been at this point. So, happens. Ruda versus Elisa, that's the matchup we're going into. It's an Esper Pixie deck versus a black and white token deck that's been brought to this one. And for this one, the black and white token decks, I feel like that they have just been showing off so much stuff. As we take a look at the Esper Pixie deck first, this one is I think just kind of the bread and butter of the format here. This deck has just absolutely been dominating everything, and Ruda, I think, this is truly the strategy to bring if you just want to have, I think, the best chance to win the tournament. Yeah,
this is basically what I would play, you know, maybe a little bit of changes here and there, but I think this deck looks awesome. You know, you're trying to combine the extreme power of This Town Ain't Big Enough with Storm Chaser's talent. We got a couple new cards in here as well. Momentum Breaker is a card that I started testing with a couple days ago, and it's actually pretty awesome. You know, being able to have your opponent sacrifice a creature while it builds up speed, you know, usually that is going to be kind of throwaway text, but if you're playing up against one of these red decks, a burn deck or something, and late game you can gain 4 life off of it, it ends up being kind of devastating. So some of the other interesting choices here, we have a couple Spiteful Hex Mages, which definitely isn't stock, and some main deck Destroy Evils. So very much trying to metagame against maybe Up the Beanstalk or, of course, these bigger creatures.
Pretty unusual, I'd say, to see some sideboard style cards show up in your main deck. But sure, you know, if that's where the holes in your game plan are, that's where the holes in your game plan are.
Yeah, absolutely.
So as we take a look now over at the other side of this matchup now, this black and white style token deck, when I first read this deck, I was really skeptical about what was happening here because it just felt like it was so reliant on one single thing happening here, which was Raise the Past. But the more and more I kept watching this deck, the more it felt like, well, wait a second, every single angle of this deck just feels like it's a nuisance, and it feels like it's annoying, and it's playing 4 Overlord of the Baelmerk, which, frankly, any deck that's playing 4 of copies of this right now it raises my eyebrow and I go, I need to take a look at this deck a little bit further, Corey.
Yeah, absolutely. This deck is sweet. You know, I have seen this in action from other popular streamers. Ash Lizzle plays this style of deck a lot. I love watching her just kind of dominate with this. And this is a rather new deck that gets to pop up. Raise the Past is the engine that makes this work, but there's a lot of new cards in here. The Vengeful Blood Witch, the Glory's Past there. Yeah, just quite a few different cards here that really turn on a new style of deck. And, you know, it'll be interesting to see if this can compete in the format against the red decks, the domain decks, the Pixie style decks, or if this is just like really something cool to be doing. But both players are 2-0s, so I mean, they got to be doing something right here.
Yeah, and with Elisa here, it's pretty much just the list that I've been seeing float around here, trying to use, I'd say, Bartolome, and just put out a bunch of stuff early on, continue to go toe-to-toe with your opponent, and if you can go toe-to-toe with your opponent, have really that card that puts the checkmate on the board. Raise the Past. If you can land a Raise the Past, and you have a sacrifice engine in your graveyard, plus a Vengeful Blood Witch, that's pretty much going to be game over at that point. Vengeful Blood Witch is going to drain your opponent for 1 each time one of your creatures dies. That is undefeatable, I'd say, at that point, if your opponent doesn't have a similar style effect on the board that can go toe-to-toe with that card at that point. It's just, how can you defeat a strategy that's going to turn every single one of your creatures into a drain effect? Yeah,
and the nice thing about this is removal is not that good up against a deck that's bringing back a bunch of creatures. This is going to be very reminiscent of these kind of like aristocrat-style decks. This isn't way back in the 90s type of old, but, you know, the mid-2000s type of old where, you know, our viewers were still alive, you know, being able to watch this.
Yeah, it's not old, it's just old.
Yeah, exactly. It's not your grandfather old, but this is, you know, just a couple years ago, maybe 10 years ago, these style of decks were really prevalent.
Yeah, it's not admirable old, it's the art behind admirable old.
There you go. You're catching on.
Corey, I'm glad you can be here today to teach me some of the more accurate lingo that we can have being placed into place today.
Well, I don't know about that. I'm still 33. Like I don't know all these phrases these kids are saying these days, but we'll work on them together.
I'd say the one thing that concerns me about this deck is the land count with it. The land count in this is both like a good and bad thing, where it's like, number one, your mulligans, once you have the right number of land in hand, that's perfect. You have the right number of land in hand. You're not going to get flooded with this by just, you know, oh, land. Like having to have these 24 count land decks where it's like you need to hit 4 land, 5 land in order for it to function. It's like, yeah, eventually it's nice to hit 4 land. With this deck, it's like the problem with that is that you need to mulligan because you need a couple of land in hand.
Yeah, totally agree. And only playing 20, that is a small amount of lands. But yeah, you don't need a ton. If you get to 4 mana with Raise the Past eventually, that's plenty.
All right, and so with that, we're going to be jumping into game number 1 here of round number 3 for this matchup. Elisa's going to be on top with the black-white token-style graveyard deck. And on the bottom here, it's Ruda going to be playing Esper Pixie. And I'd say a pretty good open here for Ruda, but nothing super exciting here. It's just a Spiteful Hexmage to kick things off. No bounce in the opening hand, though. Just a lot of little, I'd say, like toys to play with, but nothing to really kick it off and take advantage of the rest of the hand with.
Yeah, nothing too special here. It looks like it was a mulligan as well. On the bottom part of our screen. And yeah, the one card that I think we're going to see sided out basically immediately from Ruda, one of the card that's in hand, is the Hopeless Nightmares. They don't seem great when you're just fueling the graveyard of a deck that's bringing stuff back from the graveyard. So yeah, not ideal. The draw you really want to have from these Esper Pixie decks is being able to go Storm Chaser's Talent into Fear of Isolation and kind of get this battlefield going really quickly, and the deck can be super aggressive when you can get those kind of draws, but this one looks pretty medium here, as these Spiteful Hexmages don't look that impressive so far.
Yeah, another Hexmage being drawn as well is like, it's looking a little bit thin for this one. When I see a draw like this too, this feels like this is always like my beef with the Esper Pixie, was that your mulligans felt like that they were just outstanding or absolutely atrocious.
Yeah.
And I feel like that the top deck potential from this deck is really based on how good it was going into that spot. Like, without something massive to put back in hand, it didn't feel that good. And right now, this hand from Ruda, it feels like it's good, but like how good is this town ain't big enough right here? How good is a Prowler is like a Storm Chaser's talent right here? You know, like what's your best draw in a situation like this, and how are you going to get out of a situation at this point from Ruda? Like, was this a keep at 6 when I really think about this hand again, or was this a keep because, you know, your hand had some good cards left in the hand from it?
Yeah, I think it was definitely a fine keep, but I think the cards that I would be trying to maximize if I was Ruda, and something that I'm a little surprised with their choice of only playing 2 of, is Kaido. You know, Elisa's deck does not deal with Kaido very effectively, and that's a way to get a lot of damage going, and you get to snowball that card advantage really quickly. So Kaido and Flyers is what I would be trying to do up against this black-white deck. But yeah, without that, you don't have too many kind of meat and potato draws when you don't play cards like Enduring Curiosity to gain yourself a bunch of card advantage.
And so with Ruda getting flooded here a little bit, let's talk for a moment about a metagame choice there real quick. With I'd say Esper Pixie getting more and more popular, I feel like Kaido kind of gets a little bit more tough to play with, in my opinion, because so much more tempo comes into play right there. Like if Gruul and Esper Pixie are going to become 2 of the most popular decks, I'd say that these more clunky style of cards like Kaido become a little bit more tough to play with.
I'll definitely
how do you take advantage of that on the other side of the board when it comes to deck choice?
Yeah, I would definitely say I don't love Kaido against the red decks at all, but I end up, the list that I've been playing with Esper, I'm just playing 4 of the card because game 1, when you're on the play, you slam a Kaido on 3, like, the entire texture of the game changes. Your opponent just has to try to deal with Kaido while you're gaining card advantage, and while they're dealing with that, you get to set up your plan B, or, you know, get another Kaido ready, and you can kind of just bury your opponent. I also like Kaido in these Esper mirror matches. They, of course, can get a little awkward if your opponent gets a lot of power in the air and is able to pressure the Kaidos. Then you simply just don't put it on the battlefield. But still, when you're on the play up against the mirror match, up against anything really, and you can slam a Kaido, I just feel like I win 80% of those games.
Wow, that is 4 of? You said 4 of?
Oh, I'm playing 4 of that card. Yeah, play your best cards. Play your dang best cards, y'all.
Corey's crazy.
Super crazy.
Yo, crazy Corey. And during Innocence in play, we're seeing some speed get built up as well. Speed, this brand new mechanic from the new set. I feel like speed is going to be one of those mechanics where I'm like, this token. Like, I have it right now, and I'm just never going to carry it with me ever again after this standard set.
Yeah, it's going to be tough to keep track of in paper, that's for sure. We're going to see our first bit of speed, you know, being represented here at the Pro Tour next week. But yeah, online, totally fine. It keeps track of it for you.
Yeah.
But I imagine we're just going to see a lot of dice on people's battlefields, you know?
The number one thing that the Pro Tour has been terrible at carrying with them at all times.
Yes, yeah. If you're not in the feature match, Pro Tour players are notoriously bad at just ever being prepared with their own deck.
Now, a receipt and a cheap pen, great at that one.
Absolutely. Yes, yes. So getting into this now, we do have some decent pressure from Rudy on the bottom. But being able to really only have the Pixie in the air is a big deal. Now, this was a great draw, but there is not that this town ain't big enough to bring back. If we had this town and you're able to just get that value engine going constantly, then it's great. You know, the black-white deck on the other side, it's not really that great to bounce any of those things, but just this town ain't big enough, you're nowhere to run, and your Storm Chaser's talent every single time ends up being good enough. Now really all Elise has to do is stop this Pixie at some point, or find a way to gain some life, and she'll very much be in the driver's seat.
Yeah, I honestly, 4 mana up and nothing to get back from talent here is pretty brutes.
Really,
and for Elisa's side of the board, I'd say that having Innocence here going with this, I feel like you have to have the advantage here. It'd be tough for me to say you don't have the advantage on this one. Oh, and you're gaining life on this one. It's really tough for me to see Elisa really walking away with a loss in this game, number 1.
Yeah, this is looking great here. And I would think, you know, all these Esper Pixie players, they were not prepared to play against this Orzhov Relive the Past or Raise the Pass style decks. But, you know, Elise was prepared to play against these Pixie players. So that is the advantage you gain when you play a relatively new deck like this. And so far, I mean, it's looking great. I will say when we get to post board, I think things will definitely improve from Rudy's side because, well, he gets to immediately just take out Hopeless Nightmares, which look very, very bad, and I'd want to be getting those out of my deck immediately.
Yeah, some really good cards to add in as well. I'd say from Ruda's side as well, like a couple of temporary lockdowns to bring in, Rest of Peace.
Yeah,
sitting in the board as well. Yeah, not a ton to bring in from Elisa's side, but you don't really need a lot in this match. Like what cards are you really looking to take out of your deck here? Like what key card are you looking to bring in? I'd say this Orzhov deck doesn't really have a lot of key cards that you're looking to bring that you're looking to take out of matchups.
Yeah.
To me, it feels like, is there a key card you need to shut a deck down?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a key card you need to bring in? And if that's the case, I feel like you're either shaving something out of your deck, or there's something you know is absolutely getting shut down in your strategy. And even if that's the case, you're not completely cutting it at that point. You're shaving a couple copies of it.
Yeah, totally agree with you. And looking at her sideboard, like, nothing really screams coming in against Pixie, so I would imagine her deck is almost like pre-boarded against what she expects as the most popular deck, what I would expect as the most popular deck for this tournament as well, these Esper Pixie decks. And yeah, a lot of the cards are like a lot of cards for aggressive decks or big over-the-top decks like Domain, where you bring in Duresses, where you bring in, you know, a bunch of cut downs, Authority of the Councils against Red. So I imagine she's not going to change much, which usually screams out, hey, I have a good matchup against this deck.
Yeah, like I could say that, like, maybe in some bizarre world you could do some strange bizarre argument of like Ghost Vacuums to make sure that Storm Chaser's talent doesn't go crazy.
Yeah.
But I don't feel like that's the matchup. I don't think that's the defense you're in. I think the defense you're in is making sure that Flyers don't run you over.
Yeah, I would think maybe looking from her side, you know, I'd think about those two cut downs on the draw, just have something to kind of, you know, quote unquote break serve a little bit. But other than that, I agree. I'm not changing too much. And oh, there is Raise the Past. The graveyard's fully stocked, so if this game even really continues to next turn, which it probably will, we are going to see this Raise the Past immediately end the game.
This is like reminiscent of like every single strategy ever that has this like this style of play where it's like Patrix Bidding, Living Dead, Replenish, like you name a graveyard effect that resurrected everything. This is the one right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Rally the Ancestors was a pretty recent one. That was actually in, you know, this millennium, you know, but yeah.
Hey, Patrix Bidding was 2004, okay?
All right. We'll give you that.
Yeah. Root has got to scoop this one up here. I mean, this was a bit of a flood afterwards. When I say a bit of a flood, it was a pretty big flood afterwards. But honestly, I think that there is a minor question for the keep. I don't think it's a bad keep by any means. But here's the question I always have for this one, because Standard has been a really tough one, I think, to adjust to if you've played Magic for a really long time. If you're coming into Magic recently, easy. You're like, oh, this game's got some killer cards. You put out the stuff, you get as much stuff in play as you can. If you played Magic at a time where card advantage, and I mean like strictly card advantage, was the way that you won the game, Standard right now is one of the toughest things you've had to ever learn, because you have to disregard what you've known back in the day and relearn the game from how it is right now. It's so different from the way the game used to function, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's so true. It's, you know, back in the day, being able to have a card that just drew cards by paying mana, you know, was a very important thing that you needed to do. Now creatures are so good, now value engines on cards are so powerful that the card advantage is kind of built within the card while it does something proactive. And, you know, that is just kind of the essence of cards getting better, power creep in a sense. And yeah, you're totally right. You know, we used to have to tap 3 mana and draw 2 cards, and that's all that card did. Now that's usually built in with cards and stuff like that.
I mean, aggression is just different.
Yeah,
and
100%.
That's a difficult thing to truly understand, I would say, is how much different aggression truly is when you have to build it in to how a lot of these cards work. And with that sense too, it's like, you know, how does that change like a mid-range strategy? How does that change a reaction? Everything starts to change down that whole chain, and that to me is what reshapes Standard and reshapes a power level, and then ultimately reshapes the design of the game. It's truly a very interesting function, and it truly took me aback when you have to stand there and relook at the game and see what's going on here. Kicking things off right now for Ruda, I think this is a much better opening hand right now. Rest in Peace, certainly a card that he is absolutely stoked to see in the opening hand, I would say, for this one, because this is the card that shuts down what we were just talking about. Rest in Peace is the absolute ace in the hole for Elisa in this matchup. If Rest in Peace, I'm sorry, if Raise the Past. If Raise the Past is the card that ends up coming down and resurrecting a graveyard, Elisa wins the game. Yeah. If Ruda has Rest in Peace to shut that down, that card is now shut down entirely. So now the game plan is, how do those two cards fight against each other for the remainder of the game? How does Ruda find the edge because he's got Rest in Peace?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is going to be a really nice combo here to be able to Rest in Peace and then know where to run the Enduring Innocence so it doesn't come back while you're simultaneously getting in with these Otters, which are going to be 3/3s. You know, this is a lot of pressure, and these are the types of games where you see Ruda take it down with the Esper Pixies taking it down, as the Elisa side doesn't really play on the defensive that well. You know, once she's behind, very tough to catch back up. Now, that being said, you know, this exercise in hand to be able to deal with Rest in Peace is strong, but Rest in Peace already kind of does a nice job where right when you play it, clears out the graveyard, so now you have to deal with the enchantment and then stock up the graveyard again, which sometimes you don't have time to do.
This is 8 damage that came back last turn, Corey. I feel like you're not emphasizing 8 damage enough last turn.
Yeah, I mean, 8 damage is gigantic, and this shows the aggressive draw from these Pixie decks and just really shows why it's so strong. You know, the one thing I will say about having to bring in Rest in Peace, and I totally agree you do, but it does shut down the effectiveness of your own Storm Chaser's talents. So I would be curious if Ruda actually sided out maybe a couple of these this town ain't big enough, as, you know, it is kind of a nombo with your own hate card here.
Yeah, I would also say in this matchup, it's probably not the best, because, like, what gigantic card are you bouncing back to your opponent's hand? You know, what super aggressive card are you putting back in Elisa's hand that you're just absolutely thrilled to wipe off the board real quick and make sure that you don't get shut down? Like, not only is Ruda on the play, but also look at Elisa's deck. Like, what card is just, like, absolutely essential to get off the board?
Agreed. Yeah, you really just want to bounce your own stuff with that in a matchup like this. And yeah, that's just okay, especially when you can't bring it back from the graveyard.
Just a casual 6 more damage coming across.
Yeah, this game is looking great for Ruda. Overlord off the top was pretty strong, but the problem is there's still 4 power in the air and no way to really deal with it. So yeah, just 2 so far absolute beatings.
Yeah, so now because of that, we're going into game number 3, and getting a tiny little glimpse at the sideboard there, and I'd say that is exactly what you just described. That's what I see it. This town ain't big enough, and I'm like, Like, I wonder how many of those come out, if it comes out too, because that's the other thing to think about as well, is in a situation like that, how much of this goes into like are you autopiloting in a situation like that? Like, this is like the crux of the deck, is a card like This Town Ain't Big Enough. Yeah. Does it even cross your mind to take a card like that out of your deck? Yeah,
it is tough, that's for sure. And yeah, if you have to take it out, that's kind of brutal, as maybe your matchup is not great. But we did see Elisa having to take a mulligan there with an unplayable hand. But now this is fine. You know, you have the turn 1 Vermin into impending the Overlord. And, I mean, the Black Overlord here is just incredible. Being able to fuel your graveyard while progressing your battlefield and giving you a 5/5 at some point, I mean, it's absolutely incredible. So, really good use for that card in this deck.
Look, I know that this is a bit of a cop-out, but if they're playing a card in Modern, I am happy to impend it on turn 2.
Yes, yes. Yeah, I'm actually pretty surprised that we see the duress here instead of impending this, as it's definitely more mana efficient to impend the Overlord and find a spot for the duress a little bit later. So I think that's what I would have done, but Elisa just valuing taking a peek at the hand a little bit more than progressing the battlefield.
Yeah, I'm a little bit surprised by this as well, because this delays a turn on the Overlord, as well as it delays a turn on perhaps finding something. Like, the mana efficiency on this too is a little bit off. Like, we're looking at 2 mana spent right now for Overlord, and then perhaps 3 mana spent right now next turn with 1 mana on duress, 2 mana on maybe a creature you find from Overlord.
Exactly.
So that is a little bit of a tough turn, but
Yeah.
you know, what can you rip from Ruda's hand that really makes a difference here? Like, maybe you're just kind of thinking about like a key card that's absolutely like just tearing your strategy apart. Like, what's actually what crosses your mind there? Like, what's the key card?
Rest in Peace. It is definitely Rest in Peace, so if it was there, being able to slam Rest in Peace on turn 2 would be devastating for her strategy, but that would also mean Ruda's not progressing the battlefield. But, you know, it does make sense to try to see if there's a Rest in Peace, get it out of there, especially with her not having a way to remove the enchantment. So totally defensible. We know that it wasn't there, so it's obviously easier for us to say, hey, we should have jammed that. But yeah, I mean, if the Rest in Peace was there, it would look amazing from her side. So
it's less about the mana and more about the I don't want this to happen.
I don't want this to happen on turn 2 type thing. Exactly.
Yeah. See, this is why I lose a lot of games, is because I'm always like, well, if you got it, you got it.
Yes. Yeah. A solid mentality to have when they don't have it. But when they got it, dang it, they had it.
Yeah.
So now we're in that spot, though. You know, I can't see exactly how many creatures are in the yard, but I can just imagine that if we raise the past, this game will look very much different. But this is a bit of the problem with these style of decks. If we just never find raise the past out of the next like 4 or 5 cards, I don't think Elisa is going to win. You know, but if it's there at some point, this game's going to look way different. So big draw steps here for the next couple of turns.
I will say this draw from Ruda is pretty ridiculous. I mean, we're looking at 4 of the, 8 total best cards in your deck drawn, I'd say, in your hand. Like 2 Pixies, 2 Talons. Like, this is, you can't, it's hard to ask for much more than this at this point.
Yeah, I mean, this deck can just be hyper aggressive. It can also just be, when you're playing the kind of quote-unquote control role, when you just have Fear of Isolation.
Oh my gosh, I forgot about this guy too. I wasn't even thinking about the Scavenger.
Yeah, Scavenger makes it ridiculous too. So, I mean, there are some aggressive draws where you can like win the game on turn 4 or 5 with these Pixie decks. So that's just why this deck is so powerful, is you can just do so many different things. Everything in your deck costs 1 and 2, and you can really kind of go over the top pretty quickly.
And yet you're playing 4 Kaitos.
Yeah, heck yeah, I am. I'd play 5 if they let me.
I'd play 5! There's other Kaitos.
Yeah. There's only one good Kaido here in Standard, that's for sure. Sorry, other Kaidos.
Yeah, so I don't see it. I don't see it coming back from this one. I'm like glancing at the graveyard, and I'm like piecing together what the actual interactions for all this are.
Yeah, I mean,
it's
still always raise the past. If she finds raise the past, things get very crazy very quickly. But yeah, who knows if it is for sure enough? But I think we're at raise the past or bust right now. And we don't even have that much time to do it here from Elisa's side.
It's because the Vengeful Blood Witch is missing.
Yeah, okay.
That's a missing piece.
That is definitely a missing piece. Yeah, but if you're able to still find it, all these creatures are dying, that's a surveil to the graveyard, so we know it's just a random draw off the top. It basically has to be there right now.
Yeah. Ooh, that's the worst draw.
Yeah, now
I mean, there's a lot of worse draws because a lot of them aren't raised the past, but
9, 10, 11. Yeah, there's 11 damage, so any spell or enchantment is just going to be GG from Ruda. But if not, Elisa goes to 1 and has a little bit of hope still. That'll do it. Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one.
Just rub it in, why don't you, Ruda?
That was very aptly named. Just rest in peace. It's over. Take the rest of the time off to enjoy some peace. And Ruta's going to advance to 3-0, and Elisa is going to be falling to 2-1. Remember, double elimination, so any Raise the Pass fans, we're still live, but we'll have to win those last 3 rounds.
You know, there's very few cards in a tournament that I have just absolutely lost more matches to than Rest in Peace. Like singular cards themselves.
Yeah.
But Rest in Peace is actually one of them. Like, this card has just absolutely destroyed me so many times in a match. I just can't believe how many times that card has just ruined the strategies that I play. I don't understand why that card does it.
Exactly. I mean, honestly, it's like, you know, for any Modern fans out there, Modern is just a format where there is just extremely powerful haymaker sideboard cards that just really flip matches, you know, on end. And Rest in Peace is one of the most popular sideboard cards in that format. So being able to bring it to Standard, you know, most of the time there's not these graveyard-centric decks in Standard, like, you know, Dredge, you know, any kind of decks like that that are really focusing on the graveyard. So usually cards like Rest in Peace are not that good, but they're very good up against a Raise the Pass deck and other style of graveyard decks like that.
Well, that's going to wrap up our first match that we have here for the day. So with that, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to have our next match that we have here. It's going to be jumping into round number 4 with that. And so with that quick break, just a few moments, we'll be right back. I'm Nathan Zamora. I'm here with Corey Baumeister, and we'll jump into our second round of the day. We're back with the MTGO Creator Showdown. I'm Nathan Zamora. I'm joined by Corey Baumeister. We just got done with our first match of the day, which means we're going to be jumping into our second match of the day. But before we get into that, we've got a little something for you. We have a giveaway for y'all, some play points that we have in the chat. You can head over to beacon.gg to check out the microphone that we have given away later today. But right now, you're getting some play points, which means you got to pay attention real quick. Exclamation point drift. You can say that in chat to be entered for a giveaway right now to earn some play points. Exclamation point drift. And you're wondering, how did we come up with this genius name, this genius giveaway that we have for the giveaway right now? Corey, how did we come up with this?
You know, I've been watching a lot of Fast and the Furious. You know, I watched all 10 movies to get ready for this new set. And wow, I still can't believe they drove an Impala to the moon. I don't get it, man.
Actually, 11. X2.
Is there 11? Dang it, my joke failed. Dang it. All right. Well,
who actually has watched them here? Who actually I scrapped my jokes, by the way. That's for your sake. That's for your sake I did that. However, we do have a little something that's here for you. We are going to test Corey on some realistic knowledge now. We have some trivia.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
I will preface with I am terrible at trivia, but you know what? I'll give it a shot, Nathan. I'm ready.
We do. It is multiple choice.
Okay, I'm going to be much better.
So it is like an actual test now where you can just guess and get it right some percentage of the time right now.
Okay.
So we're going to kick things off with a little bit of an easy one here.
Okay.
Perhaps you can get this one right. Okay. Are we ready for some trivia right now? Can I get some confirmation from this, from production side, real quick?
I know I'm ready, Nathan. I know I have never been more ready to get some question wrong here live on air.
Hang on, I think this might be not ready for this.
Oh, fair enough.
I thought they were ready for this one.
You don't have the questions ready? It's a thing that we have questions.
I have the questions ready. Okay, I didn't know it was. I saw a muted signal and I was like, this is not going to be ready for this, but apparently we are. Okay, trivia. We are ready for this one right now. More or less. That's going to be our first category for this one. Corey, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Which of the following creature types has the most amount of cards? Is it A, elf, B, cleric, C, elemental, or D, zombie?
Ooh, I think it is going to be the one that has the most, right?
Most amount of cards.
I think it's going to be close between C and D, but I'm going to go with D. I think there's been a lot of zombies around here, but it could be elementals.
Now, I debated about this for a long time about whether or not I was going to do my actual sound effects for this one.
Okay.
And I elected yes.
Good.
That is incorrect. It is C, elemental.
Ah, I knew it was close. I knew it was not clerics. Highly doubt it was going to be elves, but there are a lot of elementals. That makes sense.
I don't know if this
is
is close or not. I actually just went to Scryfall and did this, I think.
Okay.
I don't remember how I did this exactly. I might not have done this myself. Now, question number 2, more or less. Are there more cards with the word mountain in their title or more cards with the word island in their title?
I would say mountain. More mountain.
Ding! That's correct. The answer is mountain. Mountain has 11 cards in the title. Island has 8 in the title.
In all of Magic's history or Aether Drift or?
In Magic. The titles can be as lengthy as they want, but we were just looking for the word island or mountain to appear in it.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay.
It had to have the exact words. So words that are like longer and have the word inside of it, including possessives. Just the word mountain or island.
Okay.
The word, not like the word mountain happens to be like within the word or something like that, or island happens to be within the word.
Sure.
The actual word itself.
All I'm hearing is I'm on the board.
1-1. You know, it's a pretty good start.
I'll take it. I'm not eliminated from this double elimination tournament yet. I'm still going.
Number 3. Have there been more 12/12 creatures or 11/11 creatures in Magic?
I would say more 11/11. Blightsteel Colossus comes to mind. I feel like 11's a cooler number to put on a creature.
12/12 creatures.
Come on.
11 12/12 creatures. Versus
that's just a flavor fail right there. If there's not 12/12s, you know?
Versus 7 11/11 creatures.
All right, dang it. All right.
7/11? I don't know. It feels maybe.
That's pretty good. That's good
All
flavor.
right. Category 2, History of Magic.
Okay.
I feel like you got to have this one. You're almost as old as I am.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
Question
My brain
1.
just erases stuff after a year's worth of Magic,
Oh,
you know?
no.
Like,
Question 1. Magic first went on sale at a convention in the summer of 1993. What convention was it?
ooh.
Was it A?
Okay.
Was it A, Dragon Con, B, Gen Con, C, Orc Con, or D, Origins?
So I would, before the multiple choice, I was just gonna say Gen Con, but you know that easily could have been a newer con that comes up. God, I think it's between Gen Con and Dragon Con. I don't know. Gen Con, I feel like it's been around the world for a long time. I'm gonna go with my initial answer. Gen Con, final answer.
Ding, that's correct. Now,
Yes!
however, the cards did first appear at Origins, but they were first demonstrated at Origins. They weren't actually for sale at Origins.
Okay. Well, good thing I'd never heard of that convention anyway, so that one wasn't
It's a
even
good
in
thing
my
you don't
mind.
actually know Magic history. Otherwise, you might have gotten that one wrong.
Yes, thank God.
Now, question number 2.
Okay.
How many cards are in an Alliance's booster pack? Is it A, 8 cards, B, 10 cards, C, 12 cards, D, 15 cards?
You know, I know it was definitely less back in the day, as we were not necessarily drafting 15-card packs. I don't think it's 15. 8 could be right. For some reason, my brain's going to 8 or 12. I'm going to go with 8.
That is incorrect.
10.
The answer is C, 12 cards.
Dang it.
Now,
Okay.
over the years, Magic has been sold in boosters of varying sizes. Like early on, boosters came in packs of 8 cards. Unglued, for instance, had packs of 10 cards. Alliances, I believe, was the Magic set that was sold in boosters of 12 cards. Like that's it. And like starting with Mirage, for instance, all the expansions from there were sold in packs of 15 cards.
Okay, yeah, and then we started drafting, you know, and that makes a lot of sense that it wasn't the same right away.
So, question number 3. This is the last one for History of Magic that we have.
Okay.
Which of the following mechanics didn't first appear in Unglued?
Okay.
Was it A, coin flipping, B, creature token cards, C, full art lands, or D, referencing multiplayer in rules text?
Okay, well, it's definitely not full art lands because you have them behind your head. I know for a fact those came from there. And actually, I don't know that for a fact. But I'm pretty sure that full art lands came from Unglued. I want to say it didn't reference multiplayer yet. I don't think there was a huge focus on Commander at that moment. So that's going to be my guess. I'm sure there was coin flipping. I'm sure there was messaging of creature types. And I think there was full art.
Would you like me to reread the question to you?
Yes, I must have gotten it wrong.
It's not that you got it wrong. It's that I feel like you're saying the question wrong yourself. Which of the following didn't first appear in Unglued?
Didn't first appear?
Didn't first appear in Unglued.
Okay. I'm still gonna go with my answer. I'm gonna go with D, but I feel like I'm wrong now with you repeating it to me.
You are incorrect, but I should have rephrased this differently.
Yeah, that question is phrased very badly.
Which of the first didn't debut in Unglued? That's what I should have said. The answer is coin flipping.
Okay, gotcha.
Coin flipping was I believe it was in Arabian Nights. Was where coin flipping was first debuted. It was Bottle of Solomon, Mijai Jin, Yidwin Afreet.
Okay. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. I was thinking what mechanic wasn't in Unglued, but yeah, I suppose we've been flipping coins for a while in Magic.
Yeah, I mean, that's a long time ago. That was even before I started. Now, number 3, Heart of the Cards.
Okay. Wrong game, I think.
No, it's a totally right game. Question number one. What is the greatest number of energy symbols to appear on one single card in Kaladesh? Ooh. Is it A, 9, B, 11, C, 14, D, 16?
Jeez, okay. For some reason, I thought it was 6 with Aetherworks Marvel, so I'm very clearly wrong. I know there was some card that did some ridiculous amount. Sorry, what were the numbers again? What were the options?
Was it A, 9, B, 11, C, 14, D, 16?
I think it's 9. I think it's A.
And that is incorrect. The answer is C, 14.
What card was it?
Aether Torch Renegade had the most with 14 energy symbols on it. Aether Squall Ancient had 11. And Architect of the Tamed had 9. No card in the set had 16 energy symbols.
I drafted that set a ton too, so I really should have known that. That was my first Pro Tour back was Kaladesh
I really should have counted the total number of energy symbols in all these cards.
Well, I told you I'd be bad at trivia, and I'm sticking to it. I'm standing by it. I am indeed bad at trivia.
Thankfully for you, I'm not actually keeping track of the score. Hopefully plenty of people in chat are, though.
Nobody is keeping track of it at home either.
Well, you can watch the VOD and keep track of it. Number 2, which legendary creature from Mirage had to have its name shortened because its original name didn't fit on the card? Is it A, Asmira, Holy Avenger, B, Spirit of the Night, C, Zirlin of the Claw, or D, Zuberi, Golden Feather?
It's definitely A. I'm pretty sure about this because I think they made this creature and they made it with the full art and it was just a ridiculously long one. But I can't say even the full card name. I've tried, but I'm gonna go with A.
That is incorrect. The original name for Spirit of the Night, which is the answer, was Spirit of the Night Stalker.
Okay.
And they couldn't fit it on the name, or they couldn't fit it on the text with the mana cost of the card going across it, so they had to shorten it to Spirit of the Night.
Checks out. I was still only 4 when these cards came out, so you know.
So you definitely should have been old enough to know this stuff.
I should have known.
Corey, what are you doing? Which of the following legendary creatures, this is the final question, which of the following legendary creatures from Time Spiral first appeared chronologically in flavor text on a Magic card? Is it A, Endrixar, Master Breeder, B, Jaya Ballard, Task Mage, C, Norin the Wary, or D, Safi, Eric's daughter?
I think it's B. I think it's B on this one.
And that is incorrect. Norin the Wary is the oldest. He first appeared on the card Jade Statue in Alpha.
Okay.
And then he would later go on to appear in numerous sets that were on cards from there. Alpha is where Norn the Wary.
Fair. Well, I am glad that, it's not double elimination here in these trivia questions. I would have been eliminated like 4 times over here.
Hey, I guess technically this would be the first round of trivia here, right?
Yeah, definitely.
All right, well, thankfully to you, the trivia is over in this one. You know what? I'm going to call it a tie on this one. You went 0-0-1 so far in this one. We have standings ready for players, though, on this one. We are 3 rounds in to this standard event now as we're going through this one, the MTGO Creator Showdown, as we can take a look at who's performing the best right now. And Corey, let me ask you right now, if you had to take a look at this top 16, would this surprise you at all?
Not too much. It's hard to be surprised by any of the results because all these players are definitely really, really great. We got 4 players at 3-0. I would say probably the most established player being our second place there, Mattia Rizzi, professional Magic player. Played against him plenty of times on the Pro Tour, so no surprise to see him there playing what I would think would be the deck of the tournament, the Pixie style deck. We got Caleb there in 5th place at 2-1, playing that really, really awesome Insidious Roots deck, which is really cool. Mandrea Mangucci in 13th place there, doing quite well. And then we see Elisa there in 10th that just lost that last round with that really sweet Relive the Past deck.
We do have 3 more rounds that are coming into this event before we have our first place, and then going on from there. And again, this is a 6-round event, which is double elimination, and there is 1,250 buckaroos that is going into first place with this one. This is quite a bit of cash, I'd say, that's up for grabs for the MTGO Creator Showdown, especially for 6 rounds that's coming into this one. Like, this is a pretty solid one that we have here today as we come through this one, for this. And we have now our 3rd match that's actually set up and ready for you guys. I can't wait to get through this one. This is Fire Shoes coming in as our first player for this one. He's going to be taking place versus Min on this one. And for this matchup, guess what, Corey? We have a very exciting and unexpected matchup for you, and I can't wait to talk to you about these unbelievable and exciting new decks that we have up for grabs. Fire Shoes is going to be at first. Tell me about this deck, Corey. I bet you've never seen this one before.
Never seen it before. Nope, not at all. Now, of course, this is the Esper Pixie deck. Fire Shoes has been playing this deck for quite a while. And, Fire Shoes is just an incredible member of our community. Anytime you do well in a tournament, you take Fire Shoes, and we make sure to share all those deck lists. So everyone loves a good Fire Shoes here. Playing the best deck, in my opinion, this Esper Pixie list. And just looks pretty stock when it comes to the main deck. Now, there is some stuff in the sideboard that is some spicy stuff, but this is the bread and butter best deck.
Pair of Overlords, would you consider that bread and butter for this?
Yeah, I would actually. It's been picking up a lot of steam here in the Esper list as of the last couple weeks. And I'm playing 2 in the list that I'm playing as well. Ends up being awesome. Being able to impend this, be able to bounce it later with your Fear of Isolations, your This Town Ain't Big Enough, and then just hard cast it, towards the end of the game. It also fuels your Storm Chaser's talents to be able to put some spells into your yard without actually casting them. It's become stock that we're playing 2. I wouldn't be shocked in a couple weeks that we look back and we're like, wow, I can't believe we're not playing a 3rd or a 4th of that card, as it's been quite strong.
All right, taking a look at Min's list on this other side, it is going to be a mirror match of this one, but honestly, I would say that with the difference in the style of list that we have here, I wouldn't quite consider it like a pure mirror matchup. Yeah. It's the same style of strategy that we have coming into this one. It's a Storm Chaser's talent. It's This Town Ain't Big Enough. But you take a look at where the top end sits with a style of deck like this, and this is a pretty significant difference on how they want to actually attack you and how they're attacking with the top end.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is, the Dimir Bounce House style deck here. A bit different. I do think the Esper Pixie has a little bit of an advantage here as it gets to really go wide. But like you said, there is a lot of, there's a lot of the same cards in these decks. So it really is kind of who times their spells best, maybe who gets that aggressive Kaido draw, and always going to be a really close match. Minwin, also a phenomenal Magic player, holding a regional championship trophy he won not too long ago, and kind of burst onto the professional scene. Really, really great guy.
So you're considering the ability to kind of put out additional creatures early on and really take that advantage by having more creatures. You're saying that that's really the advantage in a matchup like this one, not necessarily the top end and having the bigger, better creatures, but more so just being able to kind of sneak under the curve and really just have the stronger early game stuff.
Yeah, I think the biggest exchange here is Enduring Curiosity for like some of the other one-drop cheap creatures like Pixie, like the Scavengers, to be able to just get under this Dimir style deck. And Enduring Curiosity, when it lands, you get to draw a couple cards. That's great. But there's just, those games don't really play out that much when there's this town ain't big enough on the other side. You're just, a lot of times you're tapping out to play it, and then it gets bounced to your hand. You got to put 4 mana again down, and then it just ends up tempoing you out a bit when you're playing a 4-drop like that.
You know, Corey, you are speaking from the ideal scenario, I'd say, of the opponent's side of the board, but it doesn't always play out that way. And we do have our match
100%.
ready. We can see exactly what's happening, but you know, sometimes it does play out that way. That is how players win tournaments, is they get ideal scenarios. You have to play good, but you have to draw good as well. It's not just one or the other. You know, if you play good, but you have bad hands, that's not good enough to win the tournaments. If you draw good, but you play bad, that's not good enough to win the tournaments either. It's the mix of both of those that draws you to that top spot and wins you a tournament. And it's the both of those. That's how you win tournaments, Corey, and that's why I never win them.
That's fair. That is very fair. So looking at the hands of both players here, you know, pretty solid, but both are very reactional hands, you know, being able to just deal with a lot of creatures. So you see both players kind of holding their creatures, not playing Pixies on the bottom. And I guess up top for Minwin just doesn't have any creatures to play right now. But that's kind of where these Hopeless Nightmares really, really shine. You just force your opponent to be discarding their removal spells, and then you start casting your creatures. Ends up being really, really nice here. Now, Minwin doesn't have the ability to bounce the Hopeless Nightmare yet. None of that's going on. But we can just hard cast Kaido here in a couple of turns, which ends up being pretty strong.
I'd say for Fire Shoes here as well, this hand is not looking so hot. You know, having to discard a land to Hopeless Nightmare when you don't have another land in hand. Oh, what a draw for this one, though. I mean, you're talking, if I was going to pick a draw in the deck that was going to be the best one, it's probably Storm Chasers. I'm just about to talk about this. This has got to be one of the best ones.
That was the best draw for sure. Now, that Storm Chasers talent represents 3 Storm Chasers talents as you have those 2 Pixies to play. And this is kind of how the Esper Pixie deck wins. It just goes very wide with a bunch of creatures. And Minwin is just left with, okay, I'm going to deal with 1 creature this turn. Oh, but you're playing 2 or 3 each turn. Ends up being the way you fall behind.
How does Min actually recover from a spot like this? I mean, the plan literally was stay on tempo by taking out a couple creatures and Kaito. That plan now has been shaken because of this Storm Chasers talent. Now, actually, from Min's perspective, he's not expecting this to be Storm Chasers talent and bounce it twice. He sees one, he sees it bounce, he goes, okay. But Fire Shoes didn't have a third land, so he's not expecting this to be like Fear of Isolation plus Storm Chasers talent. He's not expecting it to be another Pixie. He's seeing another Pixie now.
Yep,
what's he thinking in his head?
And a little awkward drawing another black-white land here instead of a blue land. Otherwise, you're able to go talent, Pixie it back, talent again this turn. But I still like Fire Shoes' play here of just getting to the battlefield, not holding up this town ain't big enough yet. It's just not the biggest deal. You know, you just want to get your battlefield going and then back it up with this town ain't big enough and nowhere to run and stuff like that. Now, that was a great draw, though, this town.
I mean, Min's just got to be thinking the same thing here, where it's just he's got to be removing stuff here. I don't think that Kaito has got really any room for play in a spot like this. Like, you play it, it's just going to be taken out right away.
Yeah, no, totally agreed. Now, the one thing that Min can do, which is nice, is you get to this town an Otter and your own Nowhere to Run, or you can get Hopeless Nightmare if you want to start attacking the hand, but totally agree with Min. This is what I would be doing. Just deal with 2 creatures here. Now, you have the option of, like, playing Nowhere to Run and then bouncing your own 2 Nowhere to Runs, but killing an Otter with the bounce effect is the same as, killing it with a Nowhere to Run, so this is a much more mana-efficient way to do it from Min.
Yeah, like, why invest into perhaps taking out a better future creature when you can take out one that's on the board right now? Like, you need to protect your life total. That is first and foremost when you're playing the control deck versus an aggressive deck. Protect your life total. You have the tools to win the game afterwards. time is the biggest tool you need.
100%, yeah. So one good draw from Fire Shoes with the talent deserves another, as that This Town Ain't Big Enough was amazing. And now, you know, Min's in a lot more of an awkward spot here. Can only cast Nowhere to Run or Kaido, or activate the Soulstone Sanctuary. So once again, I agree. You don't want to play Kaido yet. It's not really the time. But now you have the option of animating the Soulstone Sanctuary if you want to do some blocking. Or just spend 2 mana, kill one of these otters.
It's been land after land for Min at this point.
Yeah.
And for Fire Shoes, it hasn't really been the best either. Like, this is a tapped land in play. This is 4 cards in hand that Fire Shoes can't use at the moment. I mean, these went from, like, insanely strong hands from both sides to suddenly just, like, kind of mediocre spots from both sides. This is an unusual spot, I'd say.
Yeah, but, you know, one player that, you know, if Min were to draw Fear of Isolation or another This Town Ain't Big Enough, there's a lot of great draws here. Even a Storm Chaser's talent, and, you know, you're kind of just off to the races here, going to sack the Hopeless Nightmare to try to find a really good top deck, and Min will be right back in it. That being said, Fire Shoes does have a lot of gas still in the tank, but, you know, Min knows, hey, you're not playing anything, so you clearly don't have a bunch of Fear of Isolations, that kind of thing. So Min's not going to be progressing to the battlefield playing creatures as, like, priority number 1, you know, because he's got to assume that there's plenty of removal spells to deal with it. But there's the talent. That's going to look excellent here.
Let me ask you a question, Corey. Is it a top deck if you scry 2 to the top?
Yeah, not as much. That's definitely just a solid draw.
Now, if you scry 2 to the bottom, is it a top deck?
Then it's a top deck, yes. But you at least still did some card manipulation to help yourself out here. So this was really interesting. Min didn't go for the level 2 of Storm Chaser's talent this turn. Didn't want to get blown out by a possible This Town Ain't Big Enough. And now it's Kaido time. You don't have the ability to draw a card or anything, but just tick it up and, you know, make sure that you get some value off of it. Looks pretty strong here.
Emblem right away. I'm kind of surprised by Emblem right away.
Yeah, no other option. You know, you can't surveil to draw the card as you didn't deal any damage. You don't want to tap down an otter. So really the only option there for the first turn.
Just tapping the otter is just too weak.
Yeah, no, and ends up being not good enough, because if you -2 for an otter, you know, you go from your loyalty being down to 2, or you just tick up to 5, let the otter attack it, and the otter has to get up to a 3/3 just to deal that much damage, and it's definitely not clear that it's going to get that strong anyways.
Spend. I just can't help it. Good draw from Fire Shoes, but a tough little spot. Only 4 mana available.
Yeah, so a lot of options, that's for sure. You have this town to bounce some. You can bounce your opponent's Kaido. You can bounce your 2 permanents. You know, just a plethora of options here. So we'll see how Fire Shoes approaches this one.
I feel like Fire Shoes' priority number 1 is start attacking the Kaito.
Yeah.
And that's why it's not getting bounced. Because bouncing your own Nowhere to Run, not solid. Like, this is a fairly weak way of using This Town Ain't Big Enough.
Yeah.
But if you start attacking Kaito, you can actually take this out. In the meantime, Kaito's going to start attacking. So from Fire Shoes' perspective, the answer to this is, well, I just have to give him a turn with it.
Yeah, I didn't necessarily...
You bounce it, what actually gets done?
I didn't necessarily love that. I think just Fear of Isolation, pick up the talent, and replay it was also a pretty solid option, as you definitely just get more power on the battlefield to do exactly what you said. Pressure the Planeswalker, that seems to be step number 1. But still, very reasonable here for sure.
And gets to level up.
And now Min
this is problem for Fire Shoes.
Yep, and now Min has that, you know, incredible, powerful engine going on where, you know what? Min's going to do that every single turn. Is going to kill an otter, bounce the talent, make an otter, and just keep stuff going from there. And, you know, right now, Fire Shoes has the ability to do that as well, but you need 6 mana to make that combo happen. If you're stuck on 4 and you spend your entire turn just level 2ing the otter, bringing back your This Town Ain't Big Enough, it ends up being not as exciting.
Yeah, I feel like that no fear of isolation here and prioritizing the prowess is certainly going to come back to hurt Fire Shoes a bit here.
Now, that being said, this Kaido can fall this turn, and I'm sure Fire Shoes is going to go with step number 1, deal with the Kaido.
Oh, that has to be it.
Yeah. You can know
if step number 1 here is like, you know, I got this Kaito just got to be too powerful right now.
Yeah.
I think I got to start attacking the life total. Like that,
Yeah.
that just sounds crazy.
Exactly. You gotta always deal with the Planeswalker first.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, the Esper deck does play a lot more tap lands than the Dimir deck. You know, that is one of the nice exchanges you get for playing Dimir, is your mana base is a lot more friendly. You get to play Soulstone Sanctuary, which is an incredible creature land, but when you're playing a 3-color deck, you cannot afford to play some colorless lands.
Oh, I feel like it's just, you'd just be giving away games at that point.
Yeah, it is no good.
Meanwhile, for Min, lot of mana on Min's side, but I mean a lot of power as well. At this point, this town ain't big enough. It's not stopping.
Yeah, and I mean that's the power of this deck. You know, it just never stops. You know, so being able to now we can this town ain't big enough, kill an otter, bring back the talent, play 2 talents, and you know every single turn you're just picking apart Fire Shoes' battlefield. Like, you know, right now Min is technically behind as we'll be at the lower life total and stuff, but this mana advantage that he has going on, it definitely puts a big advantage to Min win so far.
I think that the big advantage here as well is that for Min, eventually he gets to level up to 2 and then level up to 3.
Yeah.
And I think that's where he really gets to rocket off at that point. It's at what point can you make the commitment to level up to 3? And I think that's tough to do because you're looking at this town ain't big enough from the other side as well. So you like, how can you level up to 3, I guess is my question. Like, where does this serve actually break? Like, how?
Yeah.
You kind of see where I'm going with this? Like, who? This is really tough to visualize.
Yeah, you don't go to level 3 that often because it is just brutal. Like if you tap out, you go to level 3 and your opponent's like, okay, bounce it. You just committed 11 mana to have your Storm Chaser's talent bounced. You know, so we don't see that too often, but if you absolutely don't have anything to do with your mana, I think what we're going to see more often than not is just, well, one goes to level 2, the other one goes to level 2. This town ain't big enough, bounce a bunch of stuff, and then just keep bouncing the talents, rinse and repeat, and it's just whoever's got the otters to still attack, and that kind of comes down to mana advantage as well.
I feel like that's where the post sideboard really comes in.
Yeah.
Like, how do you take advantage of sort of the strange options that you have? Like, the first time I saw one of these matchups take place, and I saw someone bring in Ghost Vacuum, I was like, Ghost Vacuum?
Yeah.
And then I saw it, like, I was like, oh my gosh, Ghost Vacuum is absolutely wiping the mirror.
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't believe that Ghost Vacuum won the mirror match in this matchup.
Yeah.
I was shocked by how powerful it was because it hit like this stalemate situation like this one was.
Yep, exactly. Because just imagine if one of these players wasn't able to do this combo, you know, it just becomes really, really powerful. Now, that being said, I believe both of these talents are on level 2. So if that's the case, the loop has been broken up. Maybe the one underneath it is still at level 1. But yeah, then Minwin can no longer do this combo until he finds another This Town Ain't Big Enough. But that might just be saying, hey, I plan to close the door here. But all that being said, I would still always make sure I can keep this loop going when you have the mana advantage, because that is just an advantage.
Yeah, my understanding, I don't think it would stack them if they were level 1 and level
That's what I would think too,
difference.
but I'm not positive. Yeah.
I do think that Fire Shoes has fallen behind at this point, though. I think the mana difference here has been really good. Like, Min being able to just take time, use the mana, and put it back and forth. Like, this has kind of been the demonstration of why the Dimir deck is good, is just because of being able to continuously use your mana properly. Like, Fire Shoes just fell behind on mana use, didn't have the super aggressive start, and that was it. Like Min was able to just kind of hold him at bay and get to this point. It's been crazy.
Yep,
oh my gosh, Ending Curiosity!
That's a great draw.
I'm sorry, Enduring Curiosity. in my head, it was like, that's going to end it. And I said, ending curiosity. And honestly, it's kind of accurate.
Okay, there is the other one. That makes way more sense to me. It did stack for whatever reason. It still had the level 2 available on 1. Now now Min win. It's just, I thought this game was close if Min did level up both of them for whatever reason, but now I don't think it's particularly close. Now you just get to go, all right, this town ain't big enough, bounce both of your talents, or just bounce one, kill the otter, and then attack with your otter while playing curiosity to draw a card. I don't think Fire Shoes can come back from this one.
Oh no, this would be so ridiculously hard to come back from.
I will say one thing Fire Shoes did on that last turn that Min hasn't been doing is Fire Shoes was bouncing the Nowhere to Run and bouncing the Storm Chaser's talent instead of bouncing an otter. You always want to bounce talent, bounce otter, instead of replaying the Nowhere to Run, just because that is just -2 mana for no reason.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. He's busy making sure he's keeping deck lists going.
Yes. Okay, so this is not bad here. With the Hopeless Nightmare, you have the ability to Hopeless Nightmare, bounce it, Hopeless Nightmare again to make Min discard those 2 cards, and then the loop is broken up. But simultaneously, you then have to deal with the 2 creature lands that are on Min's side, as well as the Enduring Curiosity.
You're at 6 as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think you can break away from this. Yeah, and it's just been pressure as well. God, it's just been so close the entire time.
Yeah, these mirror matches are wild. There's a lot of stuff going on, and it feels very repetitive at times. But if you ever kind of lose focus on what your game plan is supposed to be, then you can things can slip away from you pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's like really tight corners at all times as well.
Yeah, yep. Very, very true.
He's not going to choose to pressure the hand entirely.
Yeah, and I think if you're going to pressure the hand a little, you kind of just got to go all in on it, but there was going to be that 1 extra mana lying around no matter what, so this is still pretty reasonable.
Min's just going to push. Definitely can't blame him for that.
Yep, and notably, this land is a 4/4 thanks to the 1 ninja emblem we have, so it can't get Nowhere to Run. Love it. And now Min just deciding if he wants to animate the Restless Reef or, play a little bit more value. And it looks like this is just pedal to the metal. Jam as many threats as possible. And I like this approach. So it'll either be a lethal attack here, or Fire Shoes has to, put everything at just staying alive here.
I think it's too hard to not pressure the all in here, because it forces your opponent to have both steps. Like if your opponent doesn't have both the cards here, there's nothing you get to do about it. So it's one of those situations where, because it's the final turn, because it's actually lethal in that spot, and because it's the exact spot, your opponent's not only shown you Hopeless Nightmare in that situation, but now they have to show you all the mana. They have to do everything exactly, and even if they do, they're still getting pressured. You're still getting cards from it. Like,
still
just
ahead.
Everything falls apart. Like, there's so much that Fire Shoes has to do there. Why wouldn't you spend the mana for it? You get to keep cards in your hand, you get to get something from it, and then they're going to be in the exact same position next turn. Like, that was a very impressive game from Min in that spot, where you're keeping up with everything, and you're showing that you absolutely can spend all your mana every single turn. And honestly, that kind of starts with the Kaito and the +1 in that spot.
Yeah, it's all about tempo, and it's all about mana efficiency when it comes to this kind of pseudo mirror match. And Min just played that extremely well, was very mana efficient at every single stop, and really, really well played. It'll be interesting in the sideboard games. Now a lot of different cards come in. You don't necessarily see, like, okay, my only plan is the Storm Chaser's talent, this town ain't big enough thing.
So now with 2 land in the opening hand with Min, we're getting a look at some of the sideboard cards that get to come in. Get Out and Tashana's Tidebinder get to come in with this one. Get Out was honestly a very unique card when I first saw it in the sideboard for this deck. It struck me as a card that I was like, why can't you main deck a card like this? Because it seems like it's such a powerful card. Why can't this card appear in the main deck for this Dimir list?
You know, it is totally fine, but I think game one, these decks just want to be as proactive instead of reactive as they can be, and Get Out is just exactly the opposite. It's a reactive card, but, you know, very strong in certain matchups. You know, countering a bunch of different things, being able to do a bunch of different options. It just makes it for one of those really flexible sideboard slots that you can kind of bring in a lot of different matchups if you just need this one extra card to come in or something like that. But being able to bring in the Tishana's Tidebinder is awesome. You know, you have the ability to counter the level 2 of the talent. You can actually counter the ninjutsu from Kaido. You know, like Tidebinder's real nice in the mirror.
So from the Get Out perspective, it's kind of just like you're cutting out the shores of your deck that are the weak spots, and then you're bringing in this tool that's doing what your deck wants. It's tough to put in the list initially because you don't know where you need it to be.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a card, you know, you can bring in against Domain as well, since they have Leyline bindings, and it still does the ability to kind of bounce stuff for you. It's just a totally fine card all around. Nothing too overly exciting.
Yeah, gotcha. Game number 2 here, I'd say that Fire Shoe's opening hand is pretty okay. Yeah. I will say that Min's opening hand is pretty okay as well, though. I think Fire Shoes might have a little bit of a tough time with this one.
Yeah, I think this is pretty brutal. This is a big turn. You know, I think the two big options for me if I was Min is doing exactly what he did here, the Fear of Isolation talent play, or say go and have the Tidebinder for a different play. I like being proactive here. But, you know, depending on if Fire Shoes wants to go for a nice little cheeky attack here, he could represent having, like, could play the Scavenger and then play a land. And, I mean, just think about it if you're from Min's side. If there is another Nowhere to Run or something, if you block, it's a nightmare. So if I was Fire Shoes here, I would get a little frisky and I would play Caves of Kilvos, play the Scavenger, and then attack, because it's such a near impossible block to make. And then you're probably going to be able to Ninjutsu and Kaido. It's either that or you just play Kaido and tick up. But I think you're too far behind if you go for that. I would go for the bluff here and just accept the fact that if Minwin called my bluff, I just lost the game, you know? Because otherwise he's just too far behind.
I feel like that's a tough bluff to represent, because do you have anything other than Nowhere to Run?
Yeah, I mean, you could have Nowhere to Run. You could have This Town Ain't Big Enough. But it really would be Nowhere to Run. But if you do it confidently enough, it's tough to play around, you know?
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Yeah, but it's a tough play to make, and it easily could have been the wrong one. So Fire Shoe's definitely playing the more conservative route here.
Yeah. I'm kind of curious about just playing Kaito there.
Yeah. Just playing Kaido there, you lose your Kaido to... You know, yeah, it is tough to actually lose it. You know, you could get it pressured, but I think it would have lived there. You'd get it pressured by, like, a Nowhere, or This Town Ain't Big Enough.
Now actually, we're getting pressured by 4 mana.
Yeah, actually, though, with what Minwin had, it would have been devastating, because he would have went This Town Ain't Big Enough, bounce the only blocker, bounce Storm Chaser's talent, play Storm Chaser's talent, attack it for 5. Could have killed it last turn. Which would have been just devastating, you know?
Yeah, you got to do something, though.
Yeah. The Scavengers, I will say, do get a little worse post-board when you're taking out some of your enchantments for cards like Nowhere or No More Lies, other reactive elements. So, you know, when you're on the play, totally fine to still keep it. But especially when you're on the draw,
Yikes.
Optimistic Scavengers aren't amazing.
This is really bad.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
this is really bad, Corey.
This is Minwin just straight pushing his advantage, and now just has... This is the ideal spot you want from the Dimir side. You have a better battlefield than your opponent, plus you have the combo of This Town Ain't Big Enough, plus Storm Chaser's talent, and it's tough to lose from these spots.
Restless Reef gets drawn, you Get Out, This Town Ain't Big Enough, gets his commit. What's the best draw from Min at this point? Does he need to draw a card next turn even?
Yeah, I mean, from this point, you know, you get to play Storm Chaser's talent, you know, next turn and level it up to get the loop going once again. And that's just the worst possible play that you have. But I mean, that's just what you'll have every single turn. Or this Gix command can just absolutely flip the game too. So yeah, huge advantage to Min. Gonna be very tough for Fire Shoes to come back. Unless he has like a Gix command or something like that. I don't know.
Pretty tough.
Yeah.
Corey! My gosh, we're gonna have to start hosting a ceremony for him.
Yeah, no kidding.
My
and
goodness.
The Shrouded Shepherd's kind of cool. You know, you get -1/-1, but that does not deal with enough stuff on the battlefield here. Plus the Get Out. Well, we're all done here, I think, Nathan.
This is brutal. Is this just like how things lined up for Min, or was this like, is this just like a demonstration of the deck? Is this the sideboard? Like, what happened here? Was this just the draw? You mentioned that the scavengers were kind of a little bit worse post board. Honestly, I'm seeing it a little bit here. It feels kind of proper. It could have just been the draw though.
Yeah, it definitely could have been the draws, because you draw a bunch of Fear Isolation and Storm Chaser's talent with the scavengers, and they end up looking, a lot different. I think Minwin played game one great. Fire Shoes played well as well, but game one was just really about Min having enough mana and drew into that Storm Chaser's talent at the proper time, and then game two just hasn't been close.
Yeah, this hasn't been close at all. This has been brutal. Yeah, my God. I mean, this is...
Yeah, kill one creature, play a couple of, quote-unquote vanilla creatures here, and then Gix Command is just going to completely end the game here. As, there's really not much you can do. You can't really play around Gix Command right now, but next turn, Gix Command putting 2 counters on Fear of Isolation and wrathing away the creatures that cost power 2 or less. Fire Shoes is going to have no battlefield. Gonna get hit for 7. And is going to have 2 creatures left over. And Fire Shoes will have no hand, so yeah.
Look, I'm going to be honest with you. Most of the time, you cannot play around your opponent's staple cards.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible. Like, your opponent's staple cards are their staple cards because they're the best cards they have in the deck. That's why they're the best cards.
Yeah.
If you're going to sit here and try to play around Gix's Command, you are going to lose the game anyway.
Yeah, and it's most of the time a 1 of or a 2 of, Like, they usually don't play a lot of them, but pretty much any time Gix Command is on the stack, your opponent's like, oh, God, and then just concedes. It's one of those cards where you just scoop immediately. It's so brutal.
To that same effect, if you have 2 of these in your opening hand, you're probably going to mulligan as well. This is not a card you can put 4 of in your deck.
100%. Yeah, it's a card you can't play a lot of, but pretty much every time you see it, it's either rotting in your opponent's rotting in your hand, or it wins the game on the spot. There's really no in between with Gix Command.
Yeah. Or your opponent has 5/5s, and you're going, why did I put this card in my deck?
Yes.
You run into Domain, and you're like, what am I doing?
Yeah, I'd leave that one on the sideboard, that's for sure.
Restless Reef's going to get animated here, and Min is just going to put on an absolute class in this one. Holy moly, that was a match right there. It is really tough to host a beating more than that one. Fire Shoes, I think game one had some moments in there where you could demonstrate some efficiency for that one.
Yeah.
But game number 2, there was nothing Fire Shoes could have done in this one. Maybe there's probably some sideboard stuff here, but like Min is just these hands were just absolutely ridiculously different in game number 2.
Yeah, Minwin, was a little bit light on action game 1, and Fire Shoes was starting to capitalize early, but still stumbled in the early game enough that Minwin was able to have a couple nice draws in the late game, and just with the mana advantage that he had, was able to kind of bury Fire Shoes there. But yeah, big congrats to Minwin moving on, and Fire Shoes, we'll be seeing them in the next Creator Showdown, I'm sure of it.
Yeah, this is double elimination, so once you have 2 match losses brought up to it here, you are out of it, unfortunately, at that point. But that's the way it rolls sometimes in these things.
Tough event.
You win some and you lose some. Corey, you've talked a lot about that and how much you've lost in these events, and now how that you're washed up, you've decided to come here and be in the booth. And frankly, I'm glad that you're here, because without that help, I would just be talking about these matches by myself. And frankly, talking to yourself is kind of boring all the time. So
a little bit. You'd crush it though. I have no doubt.
No, I'd crush everybody's boredom at that point. That's just something I'm naturally pretty good at. So we're going to jump to, I believe, a quick break here, and when we come back, we're going to have our 5th we're going to have our 5th round of the day, which is our 3rd match that we're going to be broadcasting. So when we come back, we're going to have that match up and ready. And for now, though, quick break. And when we come back, that match is up and ready. We are back with the MTGO Creator Showdown. I'm Nathan Zamora. I'm joined by Corey Baumeister, and we are going to be getting into round number 5 right now.
Yep.
We got the standings that are going to be coming up that we want to show you. This is a double elimination tournament, and we are looking at our top 16 that are currently here right now. So a couple players have been cut as we look at this one. I'm looking at Cherry cut right at the bottom of this one. Oh, Cherry had such a sweet deck in this one, Corey.
Yeah, Cherry always plays some really awesome decks, and I'm a big fan of theirs as well. So keep an eye on everybody 10th place or higher. That is the only people left in the event. First and second place are both playing, yep, you guessed it, some bounce house action. So we're going to be looking at something else for this round, and we'll take a peek at one of them will have that chance to play for the 5-0. And outside of that, you know, we have 8 players, which will be cut down to 4 after this. So 6 players will be left in the event going into that final round. But still a lot of great names in the tournament here. We have Menguchi, we have Elias on that black-white deck, we have Caleb on Insidious Roots, which is pretty sweet, and then Mengu, I believe, is on Gruul as well. So a good amount of deck variety still left in the event.
Yeah, you mentioned that Bounce House was a big part of what was in the tournament coming into this one, but honestly, with the number of players that were in this one and the number of players who were actually playing Bounce, I'd say that like a pretty large percentage of the tournament didn't play Bounce when you look at the overall numbers for this.
Yeah, definitely. And, you know, we see 2 of them kind of rising to the top, which something I kind of would expect as it's a very, very strong deck. But, you know, a lot of other decks doing really well. A lot of more unknown decks. You know, I mean, we have at least like 5 different decks in 3rd through 10th place. So, yeah, you can still kind of play anything, it would seem, here in Standard so far.
Yeah, I definitely would say that's definitely the case. So when we go into it now, before we go into this one, I do want to mention that we have a giveaway that's happening for this one. This is a big deal that we have that's going on. We have a Beacon mic that's going to be given away later on today. Make sure that you're here for that one. You're not going to want to miss it. Beacon.gg to learn more about the microphone they have. But right now, we're also giving away some stuff from you right now in chat. Use the command !speed. You're going to be entered to get some giveaways right there. Oh, I'm sorry. Just type in speed. I lied. Do not use the exclamation point. You're not excited about it. Just use speed. Don't use it. Exclamation points are now forbidden, I have been told.
We want no one exclaiming in the chat. No exclaiming.
If you use an exclamation point, I'm coming for you. Don't think I won't right now. You see, I've been looking at Corey right now.
I won't use it, man. Hey, my keyboard.
Okay, no, it's good. That's all. You said tell me you wouldn't. All right, I'm just glad you wouldn't. That's all I need to know. All right, so we do have another pseudo trivia here for you, Corey. Well, yeah, like I declared that Corey ended the round at 0-0-1, which is pretty good, I'd say. However, you mentioned that because it was multiple choice, that perhaps that was a hindrance for you. Well, thankfully for you, we're going to cut the multiple choice on this one then. Well, thankfully for you, this segment is called Rapid Fire. So perhaps that is gonna come into effect on this one. So for you on this, buckle in and get ready for it. So our first part of Rapid Fire, you're gonna have 30 seconds. 30. Corey, are you loud and clear? Sound check. I want to make sure we have sound check here. Production. Okay, Corey, we're getting make sure that he is actually here for this one. We want to make 100% sure.
Can you hear me now?
Corey is loud and clear.
All right, I don't know what happened. I guess I dramatically slid my microphone off the desk, so I'm back. I'm back.
So, Rapid Fire, that's the name of the segment that we have now for Corey. You're going to have 30 seconds now to declare as many of the title topic that you can in this one.
Okay. All right. I'm ready.
All right. So buckle in for this one. Your first section of this one, you're going to have 30 seconds.
Okay.
Name as many Magic cards with the word goblin as you can. Go.
Okay. Goblin War Chief. Goblin Goblin is it Matriarch? I can't remember. God dang it. Goblin Fanatic. That might have been Mog Fanatic. Okay. Man, I'm terrible. I'm terrible about this. That's on. I know one. There's got to be only one, right?
Yeah, there's got to be only one. I believe,
Yeah.
if I remember correctly, there were 239. So you got pretty close on that one, at least.
Yeah. I nailed one.
I want to check and make sure that we are going to continue this one for your sake.
God, I hope not.
Yeah, we are going to continue on this one. So,
okay.
Piece number 2 now.
Okay.
Name as many sets from Magic the Gathering as you can.
Okay. Magic Origins, Ravnica, Aether Drift. We have Alpha, Beta. Let's see. We have Onslaught, Odyssey, Torment, Judgment, Khans of Tarkir. God, what else do we got? Trying to go through all the ones I've played. I mean, 6th edition, 7th edition, 8th edition, 9th edition. Well, we had 10th edition. I think we stopped at that.
That's going to be time right there. You know what?
Okay.
That is 15 times better, basically, than you did on the Goblin one.
I'll take it.
And that's pretty good.
I'll take it. All
right, so we have gotten word now that we have our match ready for round number 5. So we're going to go ahead and get into it. You know what? 15 times better is pretty gosh darn good. So ignore the overlay that we have right now. This is not Min versus Fire Shoes. This is instead, this is going to be Caleb, and Caleb's going to be taking on Ryan Botting in this one. And this is Insidious Roots versus Domain that we have in this matchup right now. And Caleb's the only player to bring Insidious Roots to this event. And you and I were talking about this deck before the tournament, and I have to say right now that opening with Llanowar Elves, this just absolutely has to be the thing that you want to open with this deck.
I mean, yeah, it's iconic in Magic's history, and it's just the best possible draw that you can have to start this off. You know, the Insidious Root deck definitely got a new toy with the New Dawn here of the Ketramos, the New Dawn, as it's just an incredible value engine for this deck, being able to, you know, whenever one of your cards is put into exiled from the graveyard, you are just able to draw a card and lose a life. Combos very well with Scavenging Ooze, and, you know, kind of just combos with really the rest of the deck here. So it's going to be fun to see this deck in action, as it's for sure not a deck that's on a lot of people's radar, you know, solidly out of the tier 1 list. Domain, on the other hand, is something that we see a lot of, and it's the classic strategy of ramp, get yourself a mana advantage, and then sweep the board over and over and over again and take over the game with Up the Beanstalk.
Big mana, big spell, big thing.
Exactly.
That's my kind of strategy.
Exactly. I love it.
Now, I will say that I do love a deck like Insidious Roots, but I have historically performed just absolutely terribly with this kind of deck. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like with Caleb's deck right now, this is a deck where you keep all sorts of opening hands. Mm-hmm. And what you're relying on right now is the threat of what your deck can do just simply when you untap. And so the question really becomes, how do you do that? And so your opponent's question is really, how do you pressure against that? And I really feel like the question is just always do as much as you can versus Caleb.
Yeah.
But that question always comes down to, well, sometimes does that mean responding to what Caleb does? Or does that mean just continuing to try to attack as much as you can?
Yeah, and most of the time against this style of deck, if you can just deal with the creatures and bonus points, if you can exile them, it ends up being just incredible. So, I mean, the Sunfall's ready to go next turn, so unless Caleb has a really busted turn here, which with the Mold Tender, with this Planeswalker, you know, there is probably some things you can do. I'm, of course, not super familiar with this deck, as it's not a very common occurrence, but... you know, if any deck can just absolutely pop off, it's going to be this Insidious Roots deck. But Caleb has to do it right now. Otherwise, all the creatures are getting exiled next turn.
Look, I will say that one of the best ways I think you can respond to Sunfall, I think, is going to be to play Tivar and Insidious Roots. Like, jamming a Sunwalker and an enchantment down versus someone who's going to Sunfall, it's not exactly the ideal situation, but if your opponent's going to exile all your stuff, if you can, untap with 2 more permanents in play, I mean, you can't ask for much more. But I'd say from Caleb's perspective, really all he can do is go, well, if he's got it, he's got it.
Exactly. And, the deck always plays 4 of Sunfall. Sunfall is one of the best cards. And now Caleb having to start over and not having those creatures go to the graveyard to get exiled later seems like it's going to be too much to deal with, but we will see here for sure. It's just going Llanowar Elves here, not having the mana to cast the Ketramos, or the Thrill Seeker is kind of there, not necessarily to cast, but to combo and kind of be a finisher. But yeah, as it stands, I mean, 1 Sunfall here is just so devastating.
Yeah, Caleb just having to commit as much support as he can. I think that Caleb, there's no holding back with it. If he's going to choose to hold stuff back, his deck's not going to be as powerful. If he's going to choose to commit and run into or sweep, it's going to be too much. I think there's really not much he can choose to do in a situation like that, and that's just the nature of the matchup.
Yeah, the matchup does seem
like
really
a bad
rough.
matchup.
It does seem rough. I mean, here we're going to see Zur to just absolutely shut the door, There's no time when you play Zur and like, oh, this might have an interesting effect on the game. It's like, no, the game ends immediately. Your opponent's attacking here for 18, and we're all done with game number 1.
Cold Snap Zur was a little bit different. Yeah,
what was Cold Snap Zur? I did play during that time, but I don't remember.
You fetched an aura from your deck, essentially.
Okay.
You went and got like a 3-cost enchantment, but basically it was essentially fetch an aura.
Yeah, a much more reasonable ability here. I feel like this Zur really just, it's so absurd in this
It is
deck.
pretty insane. I mean, this one's a little ridiculous.
Yeah. So good with the Overlords, I must say. They were a match made in heaven.
Yeah, this is just absolutely incredible to watch this Domain deck in action when it has the right matchup. Now, when it doesn't have the right matchup, you're going to look at the deck and go, why would anyone play this?
Yeah.
Feels like that's so much of what tournament magic is. I feel like when you're watching a deck and you just get obliterated at like the PTQ or like the RCQ rather, when you're playing the deck where you're like, I got all the wrong matchups. Why did I play this?
Exactly. But, the flip side, you run into some good matchups and your tournament looks a lot different. So here is Caleb's deck, and a really interesting take on just the classic Golgari Insidious Root style deck. Being able to, you can tell he definitely put a lot of thought into this. So being able to have the new busted Orzhov God Ketramos, the new Dawn, with the Valdarian Seeker, Thrill Seeker, Agatha's Soul Cauldron combo. This looks a lot better to me as it has some actual powerful cards instead of just all cards that synergize. That being said, I'm not seeing any kind of counterplay to Sunfall, not even playing Duress. Caleb is just definitely saying, hey, if you got it, you got it. And Caleb wants to try to win the game before 5 mana is established.
Now, when I look at the other side of the board, that is kind of what this deck is doing as well, where you are playing a Domain deck. You have pretty much the classic style of, like you said, build big thing, play big thing, play bigger thing, hope that big thing's enough.
Exactly.
If you run up into a strategy where this doesn't work, you are also losing the matchup. This is how this deck works. So on the flip side of this, if this deck runs into the wrong matchup, you can also lose just simply because of that. I mean, this is a different side of that same style of strategy.
And this deck also just loses to itself half the time. You're a 5-color deck that plays tap lands galore, and if you don't have Overlords and Up the Beanstalks to kind of fix your draw, you can just have some really, really awkward draws as well from the Domain side. But yeah, like you said, it's a very high variance deck. It either does something and it does it extremely well, or it can be kind of awkward. And, even here, Ryan's hand is chock full of lands. We'll have to find something, but has 4 ways to surveil cards with these tap lands as well.
Corey.
Yeah.
You have to become one with the deck.
Yes.
You do not simply lose to yourself on mana.
Ah, of course.
You understand. This is a strategy I learned long ago.
Working out wonderfully as well. Now Caleb has a nice little play here. Overlord with this this tender in play to be able to mill a bunch of cards and then use that for mana is pretty sweet, you know? So we got some good stuff going on here.
We are looking at the sideboard from Caleb, which does, I think, play a pretty big role in changing how the matchup can work.
Yeah.
You know, Haywire Might can just work in other matchups, but it happens to work in this one.
Yep.
The Soul Cauldron being a very different variation of how this deck can function from Graveyard, having the Overlord being able to fight against the way that Sunfall is going to work. Just lots of different tools that work in the same way. It's a lot of how your draws line up versus what your opponent's draws are. It's, you know, while you have that all-in style of strategy versus domain, the way that your tools interact can also play a big role in that as well. So it's not just simply you're all in, do you have it? It's sometimes how those tools interact as well. Like Ryan Botting, I think, just undoubtedly has the advantage in this matchup.
Yeah.
But how is the advantage in this matchup working?
Yeah, for sure. And that negate there on the Soul Cauldron was really brutal because the Soul Cauldron does some absolutely busted things, especially if you can get like a Haywire Might underneath it. All your creatures turn into Haywire Mights then, and you can really just start destroying your opponent. But, you know, negate, not even necessarily a card that would have been the most obvious to bring in. So that turn 2 negate from Ryan was really good here on Caleb's Soul Cauldron.
Throwback working wonders in this matchup as well.
Yeah.
This was like a very surprising card to me of how well this ended up being. I think overall, like I saw this card and I was like, it seems okay. The amount of impact I feel like this card has had in green sideboards is just every single time I watch it operate, I'm like, this is really good, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a little expensive, but man, it does so many different things. Being able to blow up enchantments or eat graveyards, those are kind of the major ones. Gaining life can also be relevant against Gruul decks, so it is that kind of card that's like just solid against everything. And another one here for Up the Beanstalk is great because, well, Ryan had the amazing combo of just all the Overlords and Up the Beanstalks ready to go for next turn. So, yeah, the pressure's on from Caleb, and Ryan does still have some good plays. Overlord of the Mistmore impended into 5 3/3s from Herd Migration is going to be great, but wow, that was an excellent draw, too. Holy cow.
I wanted to talk about how good of a draw that Beanstalk was.
Yeah.
But Haywire Might was waiting for Caleb.
Yeah.
When you draw a Beanstalk and Caleb draws the other Frillback, that is like, oh my gosh. Like, Caleb now has the advantage suddenly. Like, Ryan Botting is on the back foot now and is in trouble. Like, I think that Caleb suddenly has the advantage in this spot. I think that Ryan Botting can maybe claw back a little bit here, but I think Caleb is going to be looking to go on the offensive here and really take a spot where he goes, well, wait a second, maybe I can find a killing blow here. Like, the Thrill Seeker here is not just some graveyard tool that you can only use. He's capable of casting this and activating this card. Like, this is a real offensive tool that he can find in hand here.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely great. And, you know, we'll probably see this Leyline Binding eat the Overlord at end step here when it comes off impending. But, like, that being said, there's the Haywire Might to just get it back. So maybe that'll change the target. And then, like you said, the Thrill Seeker to just throw stuff over the edge is going to be really relevant here.
Bit of an unusual spot here. I think that Ryan Botting is it really comes down to a lot of the draws from Ryan Botting's side.
Yeah.
Because Domain, if it lives, has some absolutely massive draws from turn to turn. Like, your draws go from 0 to 100 from turn to turn.
Yeah, 100%. If you're drawing Atraxas, you're drawing Leyline Bindings, Overlords, all this kind of stuff, once you get to the late game, your top decks are better than every other deck. Every other deck in the format.
Very wise, I'd say, on the double block here.
Yeah. Start clearing the battlefield a little bit, and now it's a tough choice for Ryan. You want to play Leyline Binding, but your really only option here is to Leyline Bind the Haywire Might, because everything else, you know, the Haywire Might will clean up. So if you Leyline Binding Overlord here, that's not going to go well for you as, you know, Caleb is just like, okay, I'll let it get exiled, no problem, and then Haywire Might it, so then you get the come into play ability from the Overlord.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point, actually, is that hitting the Overlord's actually a negative effect here.
Yeah, so I think this is correct by Ryan. There was really only one choice here, and that is to get rid of it. And then Caleb correctly, of course, as well. Just exiles it. This just negates, Zur from kind of popping off on that Overlord. And otherwise, it's just going under the ley line.
You do lose your... I don't know.
Ooh, wow. Okay, so goes for the Lush Portico here, and is just going to Leyline Binding instead of Herd Migration.
I'm pretty surprised by this. This is a lot of creatures to give up.
Yeah, and now I think we are probably just all done here.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. Agatha's Soul Cauldron here, I think, just closes the door.
That is a huge draw from Caleb's side. What on earth? How does Ryan Bonning beat this?
Okay, so Caleb's going for the Thrill Seeker before combat.
This is actually
one of the ways. Well, this is one of the ways to actually have Caleb kind of get blown out here. If Caleb goes to like target this Overlord or whatever, and the Leyline Binding gets to eat the Overlord and the ability to, sacrifice it, this could actually be a way Caleb loses. So I love not going for the Overlord here. That was really smart on his part.
So Caleb, I think, is making a very wise play here of looking for pressure. I think that he is on the back foot in terms of the total advantage of the matchup, and that looking for closing the game is going to be the way he needs to play this. In this spot, however, this is going to be punishing, and I think that this is going to cost him quite a bit because of this. Now Ryan Botting is in a spot where he can find another draw. It can be even more impactful, and Caleb can find himself at a big cost because of this. He does get a significant amount of damage in because of this.
Yeah.
But my gosh, this could be costly.
Yeah, and I think he's still doing plenty fine here. I think Ryan is really at a spot where if he finds Sunfall, this game is just fully back in favor of Ryan. But outside of that, I don't think Ryan can really just stabilize the board with these 5 3/3s. Because right now, Caleb has the ability to sack the Thrill Seeker, deal 1 upstairs to Ryan, and then if Herd Migration gets cast, all Caleb has to do is Agatha's Soul Cauldron, target basically anything, and exile the Thrill Seeker, and then throw that creature at Ryan's face for the win. Oh my god!
Oh my gosh, are you kidding me, Corey?
God. Oh, what a draw. Was
this the Surveil?
I mean, I don't even think we surveilled it to the top. That was just a good old-fashioned top deck.
No way! This is insane!
Brutal stuff here for all you Caleb D fans out there, as he had it all wrapped up if it was just literally any card besides this. And now you got to think, like, how does he come back? I still don't think Caleb's completely out of it, but that was brutal.
This is nuts. Okay, so Caleb has Ryan Botting down to 2.
Yes.
He's got a Might, a Soul Cauldron, and a Molt Tender here. This is not the best position to be in. What are you even looking for to come back in this game? He found a land, but it's a tap land in this spot. He's got to hold this Cauldron until this is like a Killing Blow style of play. Like, where does he find this from? This is such a tight little spot that he's in. Like, I don't know if he gets back from this.
So the one play that Caleb is lining up here is at Ryan's end step, or at some point is able to Haywire Might the Leyline Binding, get the Frillback back, and use the ability on the Frillback, can destroy an artifact, enchantment, gain life, exile, whatever, what have you. So can get a 3/3 into play, and yeah, I think with Ryan casting this Herd Migration, Caleb's gonna win. Ryan had to hold this to gain life.
He's looking for pressure.
Yeah, and now Caleb's gonna win next turn with the Soul Cauldron.
Are you kidding me?
Incredible.
This is crazy. Wait.
Incredible stuff.
I can't believe this.
So didn't sack the Haywire Might, but really doesn't matter because you do get the 2 damage here. This is enough. And this will be able to win the game with Xaxes here from Caleb.
I can't believe this. This is unreal. We're going to game 3 here. Caleb manages to squeak this game out. And this is this is the difference in playing counter disruption to this, is having these little enchantment destructions are countering these ley lines. Ley lines are like the piece that you need to keep this deck together. It's playing like this pseudo Swords to Plowshares role, this pseudo smother role. It's trying to play the cut down of this deck, but it can cut down anything you have.
Yeah,
and that tool is so powerful for making sure that you suddenly are on the back foot of pressure. Yeah. When that happens, that's where this deck finds its footing and it catapults itself ahead. Caleb having that Haywire Might is the difference in this game, and it's able to absolutely find a win in this one. What an absolutely ridiculous comeback.
Yeah, that was a sweet game. I mean, Sunfall was the only thing that kept Ryan in the game whatsoever. And yeah, thanks, Ryan, for drawing that, as it just built the suspense, even with Caleb still taking it down.
All right, so game number 3, blowout in game number 1. A super tight game number 2. And my gosh, I am looking at this hand in Ryan Botting from game number 3. I am worried.
Yeah, it's nothing special. You know, I mean, really, Ryan's whole deck is tied together by the green Overlord. Like, if that's off the top, this hand's perfect. Oh, my God.
Oh, my God. Corey, you gotta stop saying the cards.
I'm just caster cursing, Caleb. I'm sorry, buddy. I mean, this is insane. Now you turn on the Leyline Binding for 1 mana instead of it costing 4. The Overlords are online. Sunfall's online.
Yeah, you know, Caleb's going to draw show and tell. You know, maybe Embercoal off the top. That could get something done here in a second.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, that being said, this Soul Cauldron Ketramos combo is sweet. Just even being able to exile a land, it doesn't have to be a creature, is incredible. Now, it will be short-lived, as this Leyline Binding can clean it up right away, and you can impend the Overlord if you want. A lot of options here from Ryan, but I think if I was in Ryan's seat, step 1, I'm breaking up this combo as...
oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that being said, there are plenty of ways to get this Ketramos back underneath the Leyline, and Caleb has a lot of them. So, you know, there might have even been some thought to just Sunfalling here, even though, of course, it looks like some bad value. Because that Ketramos is coming back thanks to Haywire Might.
I do think that Ketramos is probably, well, I think it's good in most of your matchups. I do think against Domain, it's probably one of the toughest matchups to use it in, because so much of Domain is exiling tools over and over and over again. Yeah, and because of that, Ketramos, it's like, it's tough to get a bunch of tools in your graveyard because of it. And that's where, like, I feel like Haywire Might ends up being so powerful, is that it lets you do something right away to make sure that you just have stuff in your graveyard for when this tool becomes active. Yeah,
totally agree. And now just being able to, like, play any of these creatures and exile the Haywire Might. So now every +1/+1 countered creature will also have the ability to Haywire Might. So, I mean, this is huge for Caleb.
I think you might have been right here, Corey. I think that maybe this Get Lost was very necessary. And now suddenly Ryan Botting is paying a little bit of a price. Like, was this a little bit of a greed here? Or was the tempo of having this mana spent properly, was this necessary? Like, which one of these is better here? Was this tempo from spending the mana more important? Or are we seeing the hands here and thinking something different?
Yeah, and like now it's a pretty easy Sunfall, but you know, the damage is kind of done. Caleb has another Ketramos to keep this value going, has another Maverick to surveil some more creatures into the yard to eat with the Cauldron. And now, if I'm Caleb, I'm just spending every turn sacrificing one of my less than exciting creatures and Haywire Mighting these Overlords before they come off impending. And you know, as rough of a matchup as this seems on paper, I really like Caleb's spot right now.
You're saying less than exciting creature, but I feel like that's a little redundant.
Yeah, there's a lot of less than exciting creatures that together combine for an exciting deck.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's the nature of this deck in general. Like, and this is kind of what I was talking about from the sideboard perspective, though, is that Domain, I think, is weak to a lot of enchantment destruction. But what deck can afford to play a lot of enchantment destruction? Like, this is not a usual thing, I think, that a lot of sideboards can do. But green, I think, is allotted the flexibility of perhaps a tool like this.
Yeah, we don't actually see a lot of Haywire Mights in a ton of decks, you know? I think this is definitely more of the outlier case with Caleb's style of build here, and it's definitely paying off in this matchup. Haywire Might has looked awesome.
Golly, Cauldron is a heck of a card.
Yeah. Really, really busted card. You know, we see this card making a huge splash in other formats in Modern and stuff with different Yawgmoth decks and stuff. And it is just at a perfect home with Ketramos. If there's any new card from Aether Drift that a new deck gets created or something is kind of, you know, quote unquote broken, it's going to be Ketramos. That card is just, it does so many absurd things, but it's also just a very hard card to build a deck with. So you got to be doing some big brain stuff.
Yeah, like I don't think that the 4/4 creature portion of this card is really what makes it so threatening.
Yeah, it's the ability. For sure.
I think it's the draw 4 to 12 effect that's really going to make it so. And then, oh, by the way, it can also be a 4/4.
Exactly, and indestructible. Yeah. Menace,
that's the standard portion of the card is the 4/4 indestructible lifelink menace thing.
So now Caleb has some interesting options here. And yeah, eating the Overlord to then give a counter to the Frillback. I love that. Now this Frillback has the ability to sacrifice itself to deal with this Overlord. You got to deal with that at some point. Caleb decides to just get rid of it right away and now has just more value creatures. And just basically every turn, Caleb's going to be drawing a minimum of 2 cards every turn. This deck looks sweet.
So I guess this is the next question on this is, are you handling this other Overlord right away?
You know, at this point, Caleb is not that worried about taking 6 here. When this second Overlord comes down, it's going to be a little bit more challenging. But basically, whenever this Ketramos turns on, and I'm not sure, it might be on right now. I don't know exactly how it's represented on Magic Online, but whenever we get, 7 cards in exile, which it doesn't look like we are. Maybe we are 2 exiled on each player's side, and then the 3 exiled with Soul Cauldron. And if that's the case, Caleb's not afraid of any attacking whatsoever, as Ketramos can just block this Overlord, which is sweet.
Yeah, this is looking really rough. Gosh, is this all because he didn't use the Get Lost at the start? He just let the extra card draws come in, and that's what set this chain going. But like eventually, Caleb would have drawn this other Ketramos, right?
Yeah,
but we're talking this is 2 turns later.
Yeah, and he did draw the second one real quickly because one's already exiled with Sunfall, so there was an option to play that differently. But with how Caleb drew his cards, anyways, I think it honestly wouldn't have mattered. And either way, I have a favorite going on in the rest of this tournament, as Caleb's deck is so incredibly cool. I just want to watch more. Well,
I always want to say when I every time I watch Caleb play, I always want to say don't try this at home. But I guess it's Magic, so like you probably should be trying it at home. But my gosh, I have had such unsuccessful attempts when I play strange decks that Caleb plays.
Yes.
Just historically, I'm like, I don't know how your deck works. You just always need some weird draw. And I'm like, I can't do this. Like I play too weird with this.
Caleb has played a lot of different kind of wild decks. As you know, he's a popular streamer and kind of plays a lot of really fun decks and stuff like that. But he also, before his streaming days, is a player who played on the SCG circuit and just played a lot of competitive Magic. And, he knows how to play these games quite well. Okay, all right.
Yeah, I'm not sure how I want to address this little text down here. Caleb having a small conversation with an opponent regarding a little mishap that's happening over on that situation. I mean, I cannot imagine a single moment right now where Caleb is falling too far behind in this situation. Like, my goodness.
No, not at all. But
this is monstrous.
Just a classic scenario of Caleb, good guy Caleb being a good guy here, just obviously didn't mean to click something.
Yeah.
It popped up. It not relevant at all that the information here. But yeah, of course, nice of Caleb to check that stuff out. And I assume we're going to resume play.
Oh my. That's the Thrill Seeker.
Oh, baby. So now
that's problem.
Now this Get Lost can... I believe this hits artifacts as well. This might not, actually. It hasn't come up that often. Oh, yeah, the Get Lost doesn't even hit artifacts. So nothing matters at all anymore. This Get Lost is basically blank cardboard in hand. The Soul Cauldron is just going to start whipping every creature that it puts a counter on. So now every creature that it gets a counter can either be a Haywire Mite or a Thrill Seeker. And that's just, incredibly powerful here.
Yeah, I feel like if it hit artifacts, you probably would have seen this Cauldron whipped away quite a while ago. I
would think so as well. Yeah, it's just Soul Cauldron has not really been an impactful card in Standard here leading up to Aether Drift, but I think that might be changing if this deck picks up some speed.
And here come the roots.
And the Haywire Mite. Now, Haywire Mite notably can't deal with Overlords as they are a creature, but when they're impending, you can deal with them. So it's not like you can just go bang, bang, Haywire Mite, both of these be on your way type thing. But even without that being the case, this still looks really, really brutal.
It does specify non-creature.
Yeah.
For those of you wondering what Corey's talking about. Non-creature artifact or non-creature enchantment. I learned this a difficult way. I want to note that I did lose 6 straight games with Caleb's deck.
Yes. But did you get the 7th is the real question.
No, I stopped. Not
Excellent.
losing, I stopped playing.
Smart. I mean, yeah, this is a absurdly tough deck to play. Be like, okay, Zur is a real card here. Now, one thing I think Caleb could have done there that was maybe slightly missed was in response to that 4/4 being transformed, you can actually Haywire Mite it. And, yeah, didn't go for that one, but missed the opportunity there. But now, I mean, these creatures have lifelink, so we're going to be bouncing back and forth here for a while.
Yeah, this is pretty big.
This is pretty large.
I mean, they have lifelink, but they also have Death Touch and they also have Hexproof. So Zur becomes the priority target.
So now, there's not a lot of removal that Caleb has for Zur, so I have a feeling, we're going to get to a spot in the game where probably just Ketramos has to hang back, and then Ryan will just be like, okay, well, can I attack now? So that Zur, if anything, stopped the aggression from Caleb. But this value engine that we're going to see is still very much online for Caleb.
This is actually a big problem, I'd say, for Caleb. Like, Ryan just went to 27.
Yeah.
On this last turn. Like, this is a heaping pile of life that Ryan just gained. Like, how often are you seeing a turn where you're like, oh, I'm going to win, and then your opponent suddenly shoots back up 12 life after attacking?
Yeah.
And you're like, oh.
Zur does do a lot of very swingy things, that's for sure. So, Scavenging Ooze is huge here. Being able to Scavenging Ooze... Okay, so there's the Insidious Roots to at least prevent that combo from going down, which will be helpful. But in response, you get the Insidious Roots. Ketramos gets to activate again, and now Scavenging Ooze can exile Sunfall and Get Lost, and each time he does that, gets to draw a card. And oh yeah, Insidious Roots as well. So plus the maps can surveil cards to the yard. So as many 1 green that Caleb has available, Caleb can draw a card, which is awesome.
This is a big turn. I will say that without the roots, this turn's not as big.
Yeah.
Gosh, Insidious Roots. This card is so scary to untap with. Oh my goodness.
So true. Yeah, very, very powerful. And now with this Thicket, you can eat the roots one more time to draw 1 more card. But, all that being said, Caleb doesn't have, that big of a battlefield here. And with these Overlords to continue to gain some life, I think I would have liked to see Caleb actually leave that Ketramos back, because it's hard to attack in with these overlords when you're gonna lose one of them, you know?
Oh, you're just to threaten the double block.
Yeah, just the single block, right? Because it's a 6, or it was a 5 power creature that's indestructible, so no matter what, Death Touch is not gonna kill it, and you get to just automatically eat one of the overlords.
Oh yeah, the counters on it.
Yeah, oh my. That was a great draw, but
Whoa.
then again, remember, every single plant is also a Haywire Mite.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wait, but you can't target Leyline Binding because of Zur.
Because the Zur can turn into a creature.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Oh, my
Zur.
gosh.
So now you can actually deal with Ketramos full stop. Wow. I mean, Ryan just with back-to-back amazing draws put himself in a position where I'm like, I don't think he can possibly win, to, okay, that's pretty good, to, oh, I don't think he can lose now, you know?
Oh, goodness.
Oh, okay, yes. All right, Caleb's deck can do so many things. Being able to kill Zur here with the Thrill Seeker is incredible. Okay, Caleb's got it all wrapped up. He's got a much bigger brain than I. Fear nothing. Okay, so that is pretty smart there, as the Zur is still going to die here to the damage, but Leyline Binding will be protected for this particular turn, and then you can eat the Cauldron. The Haywire Mite can then re-eat it, but all those cards that are underneath it, you'll lose those. Your Cauldron kind of starts over.
Yeah. Now, the problem with that is that Caleb has 7 cards in hand.
Yeah, but they're pretty bad.
Well, I'm just talking about from Brian Botting's perspective.
Yeah.
Your opponent's sitting there with a full grip, and they're going, "Are you done?" You're like, "Yeah." Your turn.
So now we'll see if we can find like another Haywire Mite to keep eating enchantments, or, you know, I think the most important thing is we won't find another Thrill Seeker. It's only a one of, so that really over the top busted ability won't be possible to deal with here.
Yeah, it doesn't have the big game ender.
Yeah.
Just has good stuff. Oh, wait, did that turn off the Ketramos as well? There's not enough cards exiled? No, okay, never mind. Ignore me.
Yeah,
the cards do remain exiled. They don't go to graveyard.
Yeah, so that's still online. So you can have a really sweet Frillback, though, here, I would think.
No,
but you can
really good.
You can start by eating a bunch of creatures, see what you draw, and go from there.
The one thing Caleb doesn't have is a ton of mana.
Yeah. But that being said, you at least have 6 here, which is a completely busted amount when it comes to just blowing up a bunch of Ryan's things.
Yeah, no, Ryan Body's still in trouble. I mean, you know, I don't want to get out of hand and be like, oh, you know, Ryan Body's fine. I think he's in real big. I think he's in trub.
Man, this Roots deck is sweet. Caleb has fought through some really nice draws here.
I can't believe he's going to win this match.
Yeah. It's definitely looking good, but you know, one Sunfall off the top could be excellent, but just the value that Caleb's getting at this point, if Sunfall happens, like, you just kind of get to refuel stuff. And look at this, each card you're getting back here is drawing a card, exiling it from that Molt Tender draws you as a card.
Caleb's only got 20 cards left.
Yeah, at this point, he's got to look to just not deck. And you really don't deck with this deck if you have the Thrill Seeker. With the Thrill Seeker gone, you know, you do got to win the game at some point.
Only got 6 minutes left. Oh my gosh! Are you kidding? Stop saying Sunfall, Corey!
Oh my god. Whenever a Sunfall is needed, it gets just thrown to the top. You know, I still don't know if it's necessarily going to be busted. I mean, it's going to be good. It is going to be good. And now the real question from Ryan is, do you even attack, or do you just not attack so your Sunfall to incubate creature is as big as possible? And I kind of think that's what I would be doing, as you really don't want some of these creatures to go to your graveyard, or to go to Caleb's graveyard.
I think he's just trying to get 12 damage.
Yeah.
You also get 2 land out of it, or effective land.
Yeah, you just have so many at this point, it's not that big of a deal. But yeah, only 1 creature died.
6 damage.
And you got 6 damage in, and here is the Sunfall.
My gosh, you got to stop saying it. This is like the Winter Soldier code.
Yeah, I'm very much summoning it to the top here. And it's been just amazing every time. And now you look at Caleb's hand. We have 3 lands, all bricks. You have 2 legendary versions of Cauldron, bad. And then you have, the rest of the stuff here, which, you still got some decent stuff. You can eat and exile some stuff from your graveyard, but you're out of Ketramos. And like I was saying earlier, the top decks from Domain and from Ryan are much bigger. So a couple other good draws, and Ryan's going to pop off.
I think if you're in Caleb's spot, I think you got to be worried a bit.
A little bit. But the Insidious Roots here is great. You can get these plants going. You can get them very large.
I said I can't believe Caleb's going to win this match. He might not.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't even want to say any more cards that would be great for Ryan, as they just pop up right away here. But once again, another Sunfall would be pretty good.
I can't believe Ryan Botting is going to win this match.
Yeah, there you go. All right, Ryan drew his first brick in the last 7 turns. And also hasn't found any up the beanstalk. So Ryan's draw has not been really amazing or anything here. And now...
This is a big problem.
Yeah, now these plants start to just really snowball out of control, as you have enough creatures to eat in your own yard, 2 being enough, and each time they're getting the plants, each time those plants are getting bigger.
The plants get big real fast, too. Like, it feels like exponential growth.
Yeah. And losing more creatures here, not that big of a deal, as that just represents a Llanowar Elf being turned into a much bigger plant and a much bigger problem. And the one thing Caleb can also do is use this Cauldron next turn, play a legend, play another Cauldron, because the creatures underneath it are not that big of a deal, to get 1 more activation. And he can do that as many Cauldrons as he has. I could see a world where Caleb wins this turn, to be honest.
Yeah, it's not like the Cauldron that he has right now has anything relevant. If he had more relevant stuff, maybe it's a different consideration. But we're talking it's a Llanowar Elf and a Leyline Binding.
There's a Haywire Mite underneath it, too, so that is a good insurance policy. And now, I think what Caleb has as a nice play is, like, eat the Llanowar Elf or eat the Ketramos, whatever, play another Cauldron, eat another non-important thing like a Llanowar Elf, play that 3rd Cauldron, then eat the Haywire Mite, as your last Cauldron will have the relevant creature underneath it.
I think he's got lethal this turn.
I think so. I mean,
without interaction from Ryan Botting's spot, he does have lethal this turn.
7, 8, 9. Yeah, it's lethal right now. And he's got to play around the 1 unknown card. But you can play this. You have even more than lethal, too, as you can play 1 more Cauldron. So it's going to be 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 damage, it looks like.
Wow! Okay, well done.
That was incredible. That was an incredible match. It really looked like, Ryan's deck had the huge advantage there. And I will say that it was an advantage, but Caleb played masterfully. The value that he was getting from this Insidious Roots and the Ketramos combo, that was a blast to watch. Super great match.
There's 2 things I want to say about this, which is, number 1, I do think Ryan Botting's deck has the huge advantage this way.
Yeah.
Number 2, I do think a lot of this tempo was lost without the Get Lost at the start. I think the Get Lost at the start would have shut down a lot of the early advantage that Caleb got from this one by not allowing the Leyline to put something back into play and allow those couple of extra draws. I think that little tiny bit would have changed the way that this worked.
Yeah, quite possibly.
However,
Magic's about these little edges,
I don't think that's a big mistake. I think that the mana advantage he gets from that is exactly what demonstrates what separates a lot of these spots, is that sometimes you have to make plays that look like they cost you a lot because it's still the right play to make. And that's really that big difference, is that making these risky plays is sort of what changes the whole game. Like sometimes you have to take risks because they're just better plays to make.
Well said.
So with that, we're going to end up, I think, going to a break, if I heard that correctly, which means that we're going to be rolling into our last round of the day after that. So with that, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to be seeing who's taken home our 6-0. And after, that's pretty much the biggest one we got there. $1,250 up for grabs for that 6-0 spot. Don't go anywhere. That's what's last. We are back at the MTGO Creator Showdown. I am Nathan Zamora. I'm joined by Corey Baumeister, and we have one final match left for y'all. It is the last one of the day. They're playing it for $1,250 up for grabs, as someone is going to be having that big 6-0. Or hopefully they're going to be having that big 6-0. I guess it's not technically guaranteed. Corey, we have been seeing the decks that are typical for Standard kind of dominate up until that last match here, where Caleb put on an absolute crazy match where he just ran away with it in the end. I would say that today we've seen pretty much what we expected, except for that last one. How much do you think that that Aether Drift's going to end up impacting Standard as we go into the coming weeks here? All right, well, Corey's going to get reloaded from here, but right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you about the beacon giveaway that we have. I said it earlier in the day, we're going to be giving away a beacon microphone, and now is that time that we're going to be doing it. So we have beacon to be run in the chat. That's going to be the command you have right there. If you want to check out what's going on, head over to beacon.gg. You can read more about the microphone, but right now, beacon in chat. If you're in Twitch and you're in the US or you're in Canada, you're eligible to win this microphone. So beacon in chat, and you're going to be eligible to win that. We're going to be giving it away in the first game, and make sure you have your messages open so that they can message you and you can get that taken care of. If you're pulled for the winner, you're going to win yourself a beacon microphone here during that first game. So make sure you have your messages open and available for someone to message you if you win that. Beacon in chat. That's how you're eligible to mention that. So as we get into this now, we have our final match of the day as we take a look at our standings here. And right now, as we take a look at this, I have to say I've been not surprised by the matches that are coming into this one. But as we come into our final match right now, we do have a little bit of differences in some of the decks that are coming up. But when I look at the standings here right now, I have to say that when I see Chariot 2-2, I'm a little bit sad about this one, Corey, because he had such a sweet deck coming into this tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, as it stands, the only players that are remaining here is our top 6. Like we've been saying, this tournament's tough. You know, it is really, really difficult to be able to, once again, you got to get to the last round with 4 wins. You know, you can have 2 losses, but if you get them before that last round, you kind of walk away with nothing. So yeah, Matteo Rizzi up top in first place is our only player that is eligible to be possibly getting that grand prize of $1,250, but everybody else is still playing for a lot of cash as well. And even 4-2, you walk away with a good amount of prizes as well.
I mean, that's what you're playing for here. You got to have that big 6-0 to have it, but 6-0 is still up for grabs. I'm hoping to see it. You know, I think you can see it right now. I think it's possible right now. Like, when I say possible, I mean, like, I think it's going to happen, because I'm ready to see these decks right now, because I'm seeing it right now and I want to see it. Show me the decks. Show me the decks right now. There we go. I'm seeing it right now. Corey, it's one of my favorite cards right there. We talked about it right before we went live right now. Tell them the favorite card.
The Phantom Interference, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. A nice, good old counter spell that can do a little bit more. And, you know, Mateo's list is really awesome here. It is not your traditional Dimir bounce house. This is well and truly Dimir midrange. This is trying to play as much removal as possible. It is playing all kind of the best creatures. You have Kaido, you have Enduring Curiosity, Preacher, you know, you're playing the meat of the deck, and we get to see a new Aether Drift card here in front and center with the Oil Deep Gear Hulk. This list looks awesome. We haven't seen this style of Dimir deck in a while, since Dimir Bounce House has kind of been much more popular. So, you know, maybe he knows something we don't.
Blue-black good cards.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I want to see. On the other side of it, it is the Dimir Bounce House, as we've been talking about. We've been seeing it all throughout the tournament thus far. Min, we saw him on camera earlier today, where he absolutely dominated a mirror style of it. He was up against Fire Shoes, who was playing the Pixie version of it and was not able to take it, as Min just completely shut down the aggression from Fire Shoes' side and was able to just develop mana and completely take over in a control style of matchup.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, this deck, when it became popular, it really kind of pushed out Dimir midrange from the metagame. So we'll see if that's the case, or if, this new Dimir midrange list just found the right ways to interact with this, 4 toughness on the Gear Hulk, like I was kind of talking about in the intro. It is a tough card to kill. I don't really see a way that Minwin can actually deal with that Gear Hulk once it gets on the battlefield. So this should be a fun one to watch.
You mentioned 2 things coming at the start of this tournament, where you mentioned having creatures that were not vulnerable to -3 on their toughness, 3 damage, -3 to nowhere. We talked about how hexproof wasn't really going to matter that much. I'm looking at 2 Preacher of the Schism.
Yeah.
I'm looking at, I'm sorry, 3 Preacher of the Schism. I'm looking at 2 Oil Deep Gear Hulk. Like, this is 5 creatures now that match up well versus the style of removal that Min's going to have here. I feel like this is like perfectly matched up versus what this deck wants to do.
And Mattia Rizzi, is a very well-established professional Magic player that I have seen on the Pro Tour for a very long time. When you get ready for Pro Tours, that's kind of step 1 that these players look at is, okay, what's the removal that's being played right now? How can I find holes in it? And, if I just look at his list, it found the holes, and obviously has been treating him quite well. His innovative take on the deck has led him to a 5-0 already locked up 650 bones. Has the ability to basically double it here if he wins this. So, yeah, big props there to Tia 99.3.
Yeah, when you say well established too, we're talking, this is over 10 years at this point.
Yeah.
When I know a player's name, that's how you know that it's well established at this point. We're looking back to Grand Prix Portland, all the way back in 2013. At this point.
Okay, that is a ways back.
This is like the old modern formats at this point now.
Okay.
The good old Lightning Helix and
back in my day.
Yeah,
Helix
red, white, blue removal cards. Yeah.
I love it. All right, so looking at the hands here, starting off with the double talent is great, as well as, is able to curve up into Enduring Curiosity on 4, so a solid hand from Minwin. And on the other side, just solid, great cards here from Tia 93. So, yeah, this is going to be a great game, shaping up to be a nice one.
Little bit worried, I'd say, because of the double talents from the start for Min. So I'd say the otters are going to be a bit of a problem.
Yeah.
In the Spyglass Siren, you're hoping it's able to just, simply block and trade with something, like maybe that can happen. That does not look like it's going to end up happening in this game.
Yeah, definitely not. And, the thing is, these otters are really great when you have this town ain't big enough to be able to bounce these talents, replay them. But as it stands right now, Minwin with only 1 non-creature spell, they're not going to get crazy yet. And I like this play from Mattia a lot, actually. You had the option of playing the Floodpits Drowner or doing this, mapping and cut downing an otter. I like this. All Mattia Rizzi wants to find is just land to make sure you can cast that Gear Hulk on time, cast the Curiosity on time. So really smart play there.
Yeah, just if you can rip the Gear Hulk, you can actually get to a point where this lifelink is able to, like, quotey fingers trade with your opponent's stuff. Like, and if you can start pushing combat back against your opponent, and that life steal is able to push back, you're effectively trading with your opponent at that point. Like, it can act as a pseudo removal spell for a bit, while you're also applying pressure to your opponent. Like, this can be a big deal. And I know it's only Ward 1, but Ward 1 can be a big difference if your opponent doesn't have nowhere to run.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, just the fact that if your whole plan against it is to just keep bouncing it, which, well, spoiler here for Minwin, there's no other way to deal with it. I mean, this is not something where you can go for the throat it, anything like that. And every time you're just bouncing this Gear Hulk, every time the Gear Hulk comes back, you get to have your opponent discard a card. Then they do get to draw a card, of course, but if you just make them discard the card that matters, and they're just top decking, this Gear Hulk will eventually take over. So it looks good to me.
Sometimes you can get rid of your cards that don't matter as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Target yourself is pretty sweet thing to do as well.
I've pointed these cards at myself tons of times. Yeah, I'm terrible at drawing the right cards.
There you go.
Wow, Fear of Isolation drawn for Min as well.
Wow, interesting attack there. So
Is he going for the bluff?
Not really, because you can Fear of Isolation it and then nowhere to run.
It's the reverse bluff.
But if you Fear of Isolation beforehand, then it's obvious you don't block because the nowhere to run is here. So Minwin valued getting that Preacher off the battlefield more than doing this. But bad news for Min, there's a lot more Preachers where that came from.
So who's bluffing more?
But now with this Preacher coming down, Minwin has a great turn of just being able to slam the cat, draw a card. Whenever you get value immediately with that card, you feel great.
I think that Mattia's in a bit of a trouble here too, like missing this land drop. Now you're on that back foot of you're hoping you can draw that land and get development, where Min suddenly is finding this catapult on the foot forward now. This is a 2-3 that's unchecked. You're getting to draw the card. Your 4-3 can block your opponent's Preacher and still stay here. Hopeless Nightmare gets drawn as well for Min.
Yeah, not bad.
This is not good for Mattia. This is really bad.
And Mattia did everything that he could to hit the land drop, you know, aggressively was scrying and stuff, you know, so it was brutal to not be able to find it. But the Preacher being online here is decent. We'll see if it wants to get blocked or if you're just happy getting the creature here. Yeah, I love blocking here. Being able to trade in air quotes and still have your curiosity hang around, you know, even if it's not a creature, it's still great.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be pretty shocked here if Min decided to not block this.
Yeah, I would have been shocked too.
And now Min, look at this, you know, a pair of Sanctuaries in play. This is just so much.
So now it has a really sweet play of being able to activate the Soul Stone Sanctuary and then attack with it and then use that mana to play Nowhere to Run after you've already attacked with the Sanctuary is a nice little line that I bet we'll see here. And we'll see what kind of counterplay Mattia has for it, but everything that he could flash in, you know, dies to Nowhere to Run.
Yeah, I mean, this has to be what Mattia's relying on, is being able to use Curiosity to block this and then counterattack with the token here.
Yeah, and as it stands, you know, Minwin does have the ability to just know where to run the Curiosity, and sure, on the crackback, this 1/1 lifelinker is going to be able to attack and draw a card.
What do you do here?
But yeah, now Minwin draws 2 cards, so I think you have to take it, allow the 2 cards to be drawn, and then draw 1 on the crackback from yourself.
Oh my gosh, a pair of Drowners!
Wow.
Okay, a bat's drawn, not the worst.
Yeah, not the worst, but right now Minwin just has the advantage in basically every metric so far. And remember what we saw earlier in this tournament, where when Minwin had the this town ain't big enough, the game just got completely out of hand. If he ever draws that, the game's over. We're in a position,
don't remind me of that. Don't say it. We saw what happened last time you were saying stuff.
Yeah, it's immediately coming to the top of the deck now.
Oh, great. Okay, there's finally a land here. Mattia is now able to land a Preacher. So this is a 3rd Preacher now for Mattia. This is the last one of the deck. This one's unchecked here. He's going to go with a Drowner himself. Min draws a land here, and now finally, this is a ton of land for Min's side of the board, but this is still a ton of pressure. Like, Mattia's down to 8. We're looking at a 3/3 Vigilance here. This 2/4 is a big problem, though. Like, you're relying on these Drowners really to get this done.
Yeah, and, you know, as it stands, Sanctuary, attack with both, and then drown the Preacher to not be able to block looks really strong here. But this 1 Preacher will at least prevent one of the cards, but, you know, Minwin set this up so beautifully, because if he, you know, had to tap one of these Sanctuaries and wouldn't be able to attack with both of them pre-combat for a Drowner, that wouldn't be great. But with the ability of just attacking with both and then drowning the Preacher here, it's just so nasty.
Yeah, this is really bad. Oh my gosh, it's painful.
Yeah, and now, you're in another weird spot. Do you just chump block, or do you let Minwin draw 2 more cards? It's Ancestral Recalling every single turn. I know you know that one.
No. Oh, my gosh. Oh, no.
This town ain't big enough, and this game ain't big enough for both of these players, as that card is almost assuredly going to end it. And Hopeless Nightmare when Tia's at 2, believe it or not, is pretty good as well.
Yeah, the bat's going to try to do its best, but...
Yeah, it's going to see the bad news where both This Town Ain't Big Enough and Hopeless Nightmare are both GG's.
Yeah,
So
Mattia's going to go to the next game.
All right, exciting stuff. Minwin is 1 game away from coming back, after an early loss in the tournament to be able to lock up $650. Minwin also, a fun little fact, won the last one. So was trying to go back to back, and if he does win this, technically you could win, as maybe he would be higher in the rankings. But when did get the 1250 last time that we had one of these creator showdowns.
I see what you're talking about. You're talking about the tiebreakers.
Exactly.
Standings on this one.
Probably not. Still, Mattia Rizzi would still probably have the better breakers after you start 5-0, but whatever, semantics.
You still got to check it, okay? We are Magic players, okay? We're gonna wait until we see those final standings.
Dinner always tastes better when you're at the top instead of in second. Everyone knows that.
Look, if second place paid more money, I'd still want first. Okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Give me the trophy. If there's no trophy, I don't care. I want to be in first.
Yeah, so when we look at the sideboards here, you talked about how the mid-range decks were getting pushed out by the Bounce House decks.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense because of the way that the Bounce House decks are just curving under what the mid-range decks want to do. What in the sideboard here from Mattia's deck is going to be able to change that outcome?
Let's see. Something like Gix Command looks really good to me, as most of Minwin's cards are a lot smaller, so that can just be a blowout late in the game. Anoint is also pretty strong. You can deal with some more creatures. And outside of that, I guess Tishana's Tidebinder to counter the level 2 of Storm Chaser's Challenge looks good, and then Duresses as well to break up your opponent's Gix commands and Duresses.
And then from Min's side, it looks like, honestly, that he's kind of fighting it with a similar style of plan.
Yeah.
But there are some different choices in here as well. I feel like that this is a pretty similar plan, but if he's fighting this with a pretty similar plan, something feels like it might be a little bit off because of that.
Yeah, I will say the momentum breakers actually go from being like okay to now amazing, because you know how those Gear Hulks and these Preachers were basically unkillable? Well, not anymore if you just have these Edict effects. Of course, you do have to clean up the Spyglass Sirens, the Drowners, the other small creatures, but in these post-board games, some cards have to come out, and it's usually the Drowners. They end up being not that great. So if you're taking out all these cheap creatures that you're happy to sacrifice to Momentum Breaker, then these Momentum Breakers actually destroy Preachers and Gear Hulks and stuff like that.
You don't have the cheap stuff anymore, so the Edicts suddenly are not hitting cheap stuff.
Exactly. There we go.
The Siren, on the other hand, though, that stays as cheap stuff.
Yeah, it's hard to take that card out. I mean, it is really the reason to play, the Dimir midrange, the more mid-rangey version. It's still just a great card, but you don't see the Bounce House lists playing it too often when you go to, like, Esper Pixie, because, well, you got to fit Pixie in there, you got to fit Scavengers, but these Dimir decks still get to play the Spyglass Sirens, and they are a very powerful card.
Yeah, I mean, this is like one of the reasons to play blue.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great card. Anytime you get a 1-mana 1/1 flyer that leaves behind anything, historically in Standard, that card is always very strong.
He's got a little bit of a debate here. He's going to choose to take out creatures first. Timing of Duress has always been a bit of an issue, it feels like.
Yeah.
Like, I have seen players rip Duress right away so much, and it's tough to argue with that most of the time. But sometimes Duress timing is just absolutely the epitome of difference in a match. Like, if you have something you need to land, that makes a difference. Now, for Mattia here, he's going to negate the Duress because he has Kaito to protect. Mm-hmm. When Min sees that, he's now thinking to himself, okay, what do I need to do in a spot like this? I think the reason for Duress was to make sure that he knows what he's trying to accomplish in a spot like this. Fear of Isolation wants to come down. It's 2/3 flyer. But now he's thinking about Drowner and just, making sure he's got something to do. I feel like it's still Fear of Isolation. Just bring back your Nowhere to Run. Just get some value here.
Yeah, and that being said, you know, Kaido is just going to be amazing here as there's no real way to interact with it. You know, the one kind of cool thing you can do when Nowhere to Run is already in play is you can actually Flood Blitz Drowner it. It just means it can't attack next turn, so it's not the biggest deal, but that option was on the table for Min if that Nowhere to Run was in play, but now, of course, it can't be targeted on your opponent's turn. But you do get to pressure it.
Wow, Surveil 2, just straight up Surveil 2.
Yeah.
Sick.
Doesn't want to. You almost always tick up in these kind of scenarios when you're not drawing a card with the Surveil, but you know, right now, as it stands, there's no way Minwin can untap and attack down the Kaido and actually kill it. No haste kind of things, no prowess, anything like that. So it's reasonable here, as Mateo does really want some kind of follow-up, you know, maybe a Gear Hulk, a removal spell, anything like that to protect Kaido. Now this whole game just shifts. The whole game becomes about, okay, Minwin has to kill Kaido, and Mateo has to keep Kaido. That's what it really comes down to.
And that's why Mattia keeps the bat here. He wants more info. He wants to disrupt what Min's got in play.
Yeah.
And perhaps wants to stunt this flyer for a turn while he can protect this Kaito. Like, this feels like a pretty big shift in momentum here because of this Planeswalker. And honestly, I feel like this is one of the things that was kind of intended for Planeswalkers to initially be. And it got out of hand for a little bit. But now, like, with that power kind of being pulled back a little bit, I feel like Kaito is really where that limit wants to be and is really demonstrating, like, where this is at right now and the importance of it. Like, this is a multi-turn shift in power that's not immediately ending the game. Like, this is a perfect example, I think, of what's intended for this. And so for Min, the problem with this game plan is now he's missed a land drop. Yeah. Where does he find this power level that makes up for it? And the answer, I think, is going to be either in a Drowner that's tapping something, or in a Tidebinder that's countering an ability and being able to shift that momentum back and take advantage of it.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is going to be a weird little turn, because one thing that could happen here is Minwin could Tidebinder the Bat's ability, but then Mattia's Tidebinder can Tidebinder the Tidebinder, so then the Bat will happen, and after the dust settles, you know, both players have kind of just thrown their hands on the table. And yeah, I mean, once this gets Tidebindered, you have to Tidebinder the Tidebinder.
If a Tidebinder does and doesn't resolve, what happens?
Yeah.
It's like Schrodinger's Tidebinder.
Yeah.
All right, Cavern Bat's gonna take a peek at the hand here, and honestly, all your picks are good.
Yeah,
and I feel like none of them matter, because they're all so good that none of them matter is what it feels like.
I feel like it's almost always you take with the Bat the card that immediately kills the Bat. So I think Nowhere to Run seems like the pick to me, but you know, the rest of the cards are still very strong. And now, you know, Mattia's in a weird spot where this Kaito cannot really just attack and negative, as this Fear of Isolation puts a lot of pressure on. So I think Mateo has to tick up the Kaito here and attack for 4. And that still is pretty vulnerable to a good chunk of things. So if Minwin draws, like, let's say a land next turn, I would think we got a solid chance that Minwin is going to be the victor here, as he can go Drowner, this town ain't big enough, bounce his own Drowner, and whatever other creature he didn't tap down, and then kill Kaito.
Yeah, that's a big problem. I always feel like with the Cavern Bat here, if I'm going to pick one of these things apart and my opponent's going to get it back by killing the Bat, this style of effect, I always feel like I want to take my opponent's, like, worst removal card, so they have to use their best one to get it back.
Yeah, that's a good rule of thumb of how to attack these decks here. So, okay, looks like we are just going to draw a card here. Mateo Ricci just realizing my Kaito is pretty likely to die. I might as well just get some value out of it here. But now this, you don't even really need to do anything. You can just Drowner down the Bat and then attack it with Fear of Isolation. So Matea's just like, Kaito's gonna die. I need a card to replace it.
It's a cut down. I wonder if you could be focused on the fact that Min is missing land drops, so could you focus on tempo and pressure? Is that, like, ever a plan? Like, you use your lands when you're missing, and in the meantime you're trying to just draw your best draws? Like, what is Mattia's best draw here besides another Kaito?
You know, probably something like a Preacher or a Shieldred. I think Shieldred would probably be the best possible draw.
Shieldred is just going to be one of the best draws no matter what at this point.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, like, I do think Mattia's deck just by design isn't really the I'm going to tempo you out. It's I'm going to deal with all the things you have, and then eventually when the dust settles, I have the best creature. So I like keeping Cut Down here. Unlocks, hopefully a nice draw. That wasn't it, but Mattia does still have the ability to get this Reef going and start pressuring a little bit here, as defense from Mattia's side is not great.
Cards. Now, I guess the question is, where's this cut down come in?
Or if you do it right now, or if you wait. Yeah, there's some option. You can kill any of the creatures. You probably just kill the biggest one, but I think it's Fear of Isolation or the Tidebinder.
Your opponent has this town ain't big enough, so...
Yeah, so that's like why you want to do it now.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, if you start to hold this could be a big problem.
Yeah, or you just wait and you just plan to not cast it next turn, but if you don't cast it next turn, you're taking 7. Like, this is a big attack coming back, so... I would think you want to deal with probably the Fear of Isolation, but yeah, this screams to me Mattia is totally fine just taking 7 here and untapping with that cut down and doing something later.
And he's gonna hold back the fear.
Okay. Ooh, and a good time to hold back, because if you get in, like, sure, you get 2 damage in, but your opponent gains 1 life on the crackback. But when your opponent gains 1 life on the crackback and draws a card, then it becomes really brutal. So a nice hold back there from Minwin.
And if he's holding back the fear in a spot like this, that has to be exactly the draw he's thinking of.
Yeah. Or that, it could have already been in hand. Enduring Curiosity and Kaito are the 2 reasons to hold back blockers. If you block a creature, it's not getting ninjutsu'd, and it's not getting through damage for Curiosities. So combat in these mirrors is always very difficult. And one slip up, and you can kind of just snowball out of control thanks to Curiosity and Kaito.
Now for Mattia, what's the attack?
Yeah, I would agree.
Tidebinder's just going to come in?
Just the Tidebinder, but even that attack doesn't look great. Like, I'm whipping that Drowner at that Tidebinder,
Yeah, not really a surprise.
And we'll see. Minwin doesn't have, anything too exciting going on. You can play the Drowner, tap down the Bat. I think that's totally reasonable, but yeah, just not playing anything is totally fine, too.
This is, I have to say, when you have these kinds of options in hand for Min's side, you have the Drowner, you have this town ain't big enough, and no mana gets spent here.
Yeah.
It certainly is one of those options where I really wish I could know what's going on in Min's head. Like, what is the deliberate thought? See, right now in this spot, Min is thinking, I'm going to put this Sphere of Isolation back in my hand. I'm going to start getting in 2 damage a turn.
Yep.
Like, that's what's going on now.
Easily could be. Could also just Fear of Isolation, bring back a land and not try to do anything with that. But we'll see. There was also the option to attack with the Tidebinder, and then if the Restless Reef gets animated, you can just tap it down with the Drowner. So a ton of options here with just 3 cards in hand, which just really leads to an exciting mirror match here. Ooh, brings back the Tidebinder is interesting. Now Mattia can actually have a turn where he can do some nasty stuff here with this Curiosity cut down and animating the Reef. Like, might be able to draw 1 or 2 cards next turn.
I mean, Curiosity's hit the board. So
Scary.
Now, cut down's going to stay in hand. This town ain't big enough. He knows is there. This is a problem to use cut down here.
Yep, I would agree.
Oh my.
Kitty Cats came to play.
Yeah, this could be a big problem.
Yeah. And now, okay, this is going to be really interesting, because if we go to combat, we'll probably see Minwin play a Drowner, tap down the Curiosity, but then Mattia could animate the Restless Reef, attack, and if it gets double blocked, you cut down the blocker. So the patience on this cut down really might lead to a really, really profitable attack.
Wow.
Let's see if that happens. Just got the cat in there.
Oh, man, yeah, I mean, no tap down here.
This is a tough spot. This is a really tough spot. Both players are being very coy around each other's options. And, you know, right now, with those back-to-back curiosities, you got to put the advantage for Mattia here. This is huge. If they ever connect, it's just really bad news.
So Min's just going for, like, pure tempo here? Like mana tempo? This is very unusual.
Yeah, just bouncing the two creatures here. And now we'll see if Mattia just wants to, like, say, okay, here's my hand. I'm going to cut down that Fear of Isolation and just play the Curiosity. And just play one of them. You know, play the one that gets bounced right now. Well, it can't be countered or anything like that. There's not a lot of counters from the bounce house side, so no real pressure to do it yet.
Pseudo-dead draw for Min.
Yeah, you know how good Gix command looked last time. It doesn't look that good now, you know?
We know that for Mattia's side, there's not really much of a reason to use the cut down here. It's the same situation that he was in earlier, so he's just going to continue to spend 4 mana to Min spending less.
Wow, this attack is pretty aggressive as well. Yeah, I agree. I think you got to hold this back. Now you're officially in defense here from Min Win, so... Yeah, I think holding it back here is correct. And yeah, this Gix command, it looked amazing in our last match, and it does not look good right now.
I think it's just the spot that he's in, though. You know, he's hit this spot where he's stuck on 4 land. Mattia's pulled ahead. He's spending 4 mana to spending, 1 or 2. Yeah, I think Mattia's just got the top end at this point, and Min cannot capitalize on that.
Yeah, and now it comes down to a spot where... You know, if any creature ever connects and double Curiosity's abilities go on the stack, like, it's over.
That is not a good statement for Min to hear right now is, well, if any creature ever hits your life total, you're like, oh, gosh, they're all lethal.
So here's where this patient cut down is really going to come into play. Like, Mattia could have cast this, 7 turns ago, waited till now, and it's just the perfect spot. Nothing Min Win can do about it since this town ain't big enough is gone. Beautifully played by Mattia Rizzi. That was amazing.
The patience of that, too. You can get a strong value out of this cut down at any point in the game. And what Mattia did instead was take his time and instead get 2 creatures out of this cut down because he forces Min to block on this Enduring Curiosity.
Yep. Now
instead, Min is going to have to play this Drowner, tap something down, and hope to start pushing damage at some point in the game. Mattia's got another Enduring Curiosity in hand, and Min is almost certainly never going to recover on this. Hopeless Nightmare comes down, and Mattia can just cast the other Curiosity instead. Min is in a heap of trouble here.
Yeah, has the ability to drown down this one Curiosity, which looks okay, but the bad news of this other Curiosity getting cast right now is basically going to be GG. Like, you get to shuffle away this Curiosity, but then next turn, Mattia gets to attack for 9 and draw 3 cards, plus the 1 card on his draw step.
Well, you say he does, but I think we might go to game number 3.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we'll go through the motions here, but yeah, that swing here from Mattia is just going to be too devastating. And these are the games that this Dimir mid-range deck wins. It's the draws where you just you play a bunch of creatures, you kill creatures, you be patient, and eventually you just take over. Woo.
I mean, again, you said that they were going to get to swing and draw these cards. But I figured we were going to go to game number 3 instead on that one. Sometimes it's not conceding; it's just common sense. Like, there's nothing in the deck that can get drawn at that point that keeps Min in the game. Like that again, it's all coming down to that cut down being spent the way it's spent too.
It was
a lot
so
of other
good.
factors play into it where Min gets stuck on land. That's what allows Mattia to really take advantage of that cut down scenario. But it's the recognition that Min being stuck on land and just simply taking your time and spending 4 mana and spending 4 mana and spending 4 mana, letting this town ain't big enough really not be able to take advantage of tempo at any point in that. And that's because you didn't spend this cut down sitting in your hand and going, well, go ahead, try to take advantage of it at some point.
Yeah.
He doesn't have that opportunity.
That was really awesome. And now what I would like to see from Min Win, now that he's going to be back on the play, is especially take out the Gix command. I do not love that card in this matchup anyways, but really try to be this more hyper-aggressive version of your deck. Just try to go all in. And, you know, if you took out some Drowners or you took out some Fear of Isolations, Storm Chaser Talent, whatever that, like, core shell of your Bounce House deck, whatever parts you took out, bring them back in for game 3 and leave some of the slower cards in the sideboard, since on the play you're heavily advantaged. You just want to push your advantage before Mattia Rizzi can get any footing down to be able to do something like those Curiosities taking over.
Well, our final game's getting underway here, and I will say that for my final point before we kick this off, so we go into mulligans here, is that Corey, I want to provide a devil's advocate here for the Gix's command. Let's say this is a one of from Win side of the board.
Yeah.
And the main goal of this was just to put 2 creatures back to hand from the graveyard, treating it like a weird draw 2 spell. I could totally see that from Min's side. You know, I don't think he's expecting to get stuck on 4 land while both players spend all their cards real quick and, you know, kind of have nothing left. That's kind of what happened to that last game, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that's true. And this is a matchup that does kind of, you know, take a while. And that one of Gix command, if you draw it on turn 10, it's almost always going to be good. But if you're too far behind and you're staring down some Curiosities, it doesn't look as strong. But, you know, Min Win's hand here is all reactive, but Mattia's hand is all aggressive here. So this is actually working out in Min Win's favor here.
Fairy Mastermind. It's got nowhere to run. God, the card names are so good.
They really are.
I do want to make my final point on the Gix command. I also would take it out as well. I mean, I perform really badly with Gix's command personally. I've had very little success with this card. I don't think I play it very well.
Yeah, fair. And now here's another spot I bet we see Nowhere to Run selected, as that's the easy card to just slam, kill the bat with. But, you know, you're looking at a hand full of reaction, none of which actually deals with Curiosity straight away, but all these This Town Ain't Big Enough is able to just tempo it out so quickly that it's still going to be very, very strong. So now Mattia knows, like, hey, what a draw.
Wow, that is the best draw in the deck for Min. That saves the hand. Draw. Oh my gosh, this hand was looking so bad, Corey.
Oh, Mattia's just got to be like, come on, really?
Oh my gosh, that was such a huge draw.
Yeah, that could have been a $650 top deck right there, as that just really unlocks the hand. Now you have the ability to go, This Town Ain't Big Enough on maybe both of your enchantments. Maybe you play it a little bit more patiently. But yeah, I think I like this. Just get...
Oh.
I wonder what we're going to target here, because there's a lot of different options here. If you're doing it during your main phase, you're targeting your talent. That makes sense. And now we're going to replay it. Now, the bat does have the ability to come back down and take the same card, but once you have the talent on the battlefield, its value is gonna be found here at some point. But Min Win was just saying, hey, I don't want you to ever draw a card off Enduring Curiosity and get any value on me.
Don't give your opponent even like close to an option on this one. If you let your opponent take their turn and they have a random negate, and while you're trying to This Town Ain't Big Enough, and then they get like a random swing out of something, just anything that happens and shuts down a turn for a slight little bit, and you lose your tempo, suddenly all of this Storm Chaser's talent value is lost. Yep, take your value 100%. Now, you'll make up the difference later.
100% agreed. And now we're going to kind of see this, Dimir mid-range, quote-unquote, mirror match, where here's the bounce house aspect of it coming into play, versus last game, Min Win did not have that kind of bounce house thing going. And this is what I think gives the advantage to this style of Dimir deck. But of course, you don't draw those combinations every single time.
I am very worried for Mattia after this Storm Chaser's talent draw. Like, my gosh. This
was so good.
This hand, was like, this is like a solid, like, 65, 75. The hand is like a 93 now. This is so insane. Oh, my gosh. Hopeless Nightmare as well. This is a very accurate description of what's happening. Also, Mattia's hand's getting pressured now, too. He just saw the hand.
Yeah, just saw the hand, so this is face-up information here. So, of course, that island's going to go, as that was the extra land. Now, you can't really play this Drowner proactively, because Mattia knows that Minwin could just go, okay, this town ain't big enough, bounce Hopeless Nightmare, bounce Nowhere to Run, replay Hopeless Nightmare, and get your Enduring Curiosity. So, yeah, Drowner can't be played right now. That was a good heads-up play by Mattia.
Oh, Mattia just saw Min's hand and didn't see these cards. Like, it's got to be so painful.
Yeah, and now we're going to see the Drowner. We're probably going to see this Curiosity get cast aggressively so that it kind of forces the hand of Min to just go, this town ain't big enough, bounce Curiosity, bounce something else. But we'll see. Maybe you're a little more patient and we go for something else. Duress would have been great if you had that land 5. Duress into Curiosity would have been sweet. It would have been so good. But that Hopeless Nightmare just interacted with that perfectly.
Min's going to have to use... So, he chooses not to go for Enduring Curiosity.
Yeah. And this, of course, isn't very mana efficient, but it does break up some of this town ain't big enough synergies here.
He's just pushing the chain through. He's just going to try to brute force it instead because he anticipates that Min is going to have this town ain't big enough. With the way that this mana has gone through, with the way it's used... He just simply says, I anticipate you're going to do something better here. Yeah,
so I think you just bounce the Hopeless Sniper and the Nowhere to Run, and you say, okay, pick some cards. What do you want me to discard? And Mattia will basically be forced to make the Hopeless discard get discarded. And then all of a sudden, Minwin has 2 2-mana removal spells and is looking great. But the Curiosity gets to stick around, and that's the most important thing.
Interesting. So he's going to pick the Hopeless away. Says, I need to play for next turn. I think this is wise. So for Min now, it's just plethora of options.
Yeah, and Min doesn't have to do anything now, but at any point can go Nowhere to Run on the bat, get that Nowhere to Run back, and then kill the other Drowner as well. But you get to say, yeah, go to combat. I have no blockers. And, kind of look at him. You want to cast it?
Yeah, sure. No blocks.
Yeah. So now it looks like Minwin's deciding if he wants to do any drowning here.
See, this is a big benefit of Magic Online, too. You don't get to hear your opponent go, yeah, sure, no blocks.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh.
And just takes the damage, waits till end step to make sure there's no shenanigans afoot. And now we'll see Minwin use his mana. First Nowhere to Run, always going for the bat because you get your free spell back. And then we'll see if we want to cast the other one. I think you do. I think you just cast it, get rid of the Drowner.
Yeah, why not?
But there's an option to hold up mana. But I think when you have Storm Chaser's talent ready to go, like Minwin's hand is just so mana hungry right now that I just want to be using my mana on anything here. So I love casting this, even if it's only on a Drowner.
Look, I'm going to spend my mana, okay?
Yes.
You've heard me talk about the way that I want to spend my mana. You think I'm not going to blow up a creature at the end of someone's turn?
Absolutely not. So that was an interesting draw here. Now, if Mattia goes for the play, which I think would probably be pretty obvious, if you don't want to play Curiosity, you just want to animate your creature land, Tidebinder can at least negate that. So it'll be interesting to see the play here, but does go for the Curiosity, it looks like.
Yeah, I think it's hard to not cast here.
Yeah.
I think casting it's just almost always going to be your stronger one because it offers the layer of defense of if your opponent's only got a way to remove this, it sticks around and creates a layer of something. That can be problematic for your opponent, and I think that's something you absolutely have to do. This also creates a barrier of something like your opponent does need to take care of this. This isn't something that you can just ignore. Like, you can't just be like, okay, take 4. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, taking this 4 is a problem.
And now the drown. Wow, that could have been a huge draw as the Drowner on Minwin's side was just going to drown away this Curiosity and get rid of it. But now Drowner from Mattia can drown the Drowner, so you can't do any drowning. Pretty big draw.
I fear for Mattia, though, just so few options.
Okay, so now we got a great... Here's a great plan B. You get to go for the Throat, the Enduring Curiosity, and counter the ability to bring it back.
Yep.
I would think that's just what you want to do at your opponent's upkeep before they draw a negate or something like that. As, you know, Enduring Curiosity has to go away. It does use up all Minwin's resources. In air quotes, you still have the talent available, but wow, looks like we're going to allow that to happen.
You do have options still at this point as well, because, you know, having a range of options can still really chokehold your opponent, I'd say, at this point.
Mm-hmm. I think what Minwin here is trying to do is to, you know, air quotes, bait Mattia Rizzi into animating one of these creature lands and then dealing with the Curiosity and then blocking with the Tidebinder to kind of get everything. Which, yeah, it's just trying to get the max amount of value out of here, and I think it's kind of going to work. I mean, with top decking a land, you kind of got to go for it, but man, it looks like he's not gonna. Just some tight play all around. Because the one thing that Mattia has to know is, well, Storm Chaser's talent is on the battlefield, and Minwin did not do anything with it, so clearly has some things to do.
I would definitely assume so. If my opponent has Storm Chaser talent and doesn't spend 4 mana, I'm worried.
This has been an incredibly played match by both players. Like, two high-level Dimir gamers here going at it. This has been incredible to watch.
Still no attacks from inside.
Yeah, just as defensive as possible. We're going to probably see this Soulstone Sanctuary get animated. Just using mana at this point, and we'll see, is this the time where Minwin fires something off? Looks like no. All right, now it looks like Mattia is going full force here. Here comes the Restless Reef coming down. Now we're going to see some fireworks on this turn.
I mean, something's got to give. Mattia's in a really bad spot here. I think this is probably got to be close to the end here.
I mean, it is close. This game is still very, very much a game. You know, I would agree with you. Minwin has the advantage with all these all this action in hand. But it'll be interesting how we get this played here. The one thing that you can also do is try to just play your Go for the Throat and Nowhere to Run and get your Otter up to 3 powers to be able to trade. But I still am going to be very tempted here to do some blocking, kill Curiosity, and then Tidebinder the coming back ability. But we'll see what's done.
Yeah, there's block number 1. Nowhere to Run can also be cast on the Reef just to buff it up slightly.
Yeah.
Like, you can trade a land off if you wanted to. Nowhere to Run on the Reef.
Yeah, God, there's so many options here. I'm really interested to see what Minwin does, because if you block the Otter to the Reef, you're saying, hey, I'm going to know where to run that. But if you know where to run that, you're allowing Mattia to draw a card here, for sure.
No, you could go for the Throat.
You can, but then it comes back. And then it just sticks around forever. I think that is the one thing you can't allow, is for that Enduring Curiosity to be an enchantment on the battlefield.
Oh, I see what you're saying, because you don't have the mana. You literally don't have the mana for this.
Yeah, so like, I'm saying, I would rather take 4 from the Reef and
actually giving up the card.
Yeah, and try to block the Sanctuary. Like, there's a lot of layers you can do here. I'm just going to let them do
Yeah, you can chump. Okay, yeah, I'm okay with the chump then. I don't want to give Mattia a card. That's the one thing that we're looking at for the combat is, how do you not let Mattia draw a card here? And the answer to that is going to be sacrifice the 2/1.
So with what happens here, you're able to kill the Reef. The Sanctuary will live on Mattia's side. The Curiosity's gone, and then we'll get Tidebindered. And,
oh, maybe not.
Yeah, I didn't love that block.
Rethink!
I don't want to kill the Reef here. I think that's the number one thing I don't want to do. Yeah, okay. This I kind of like, as now you can go for the Throat on the Reef, and then Tidebinder the ability. And the clock just ticked in as well here to add a little extra pressure.
Oh my goodness, the clock. Oh, when the clock kicks in, that's when your instincts take over.
Exactly. Then you got to start not necessarily playing absolutely perfect, but you just got to play. So here's the Tidebinder to counter that. Now, the one kind of bad news is, well, you just spent all that time getting rid of the Reef. There's another one that's going to come down second main that will actually start kind of doing some damage here. So this is very much still a game.
Mattia holding this Reef in the hand during combat changes the way that Min thinks about this. That's a big problem. That's a tiny detail that makes a big difference. Min draws a card that is tough for thinking.
Yep, and now is the question, is this the time to Storm Chaser's talent back and get a spell? Or do you want to just go Fear of Isolation, bouncing a Nowhere to Run?
You bounce a talent.
Okay. Okay. Now you have the ability to take down a Reef, but a Kaido.
My gosh.
It's an excellent draw. Wow, this has been an insanely awesome match. I'm glad we saved our 100% best match for last. This has been absolutely incredible.
It's just back and forth haymakers. Think about how this game would have gone if Min didn't draw that Storm Chaser's talent.
Yeah.
It just would have ended.
I mean,
he
that
would have run
being
out of
said,
cards.
the talent hasn't really done anything yet besides just put some otters in, and that's been great and all, but the representation of what it can do in the late game has made this game be played a little bit differently. Mattia Rizzi has just had to go all in a lot more and put the pedal to the metal because he knows this talent will take over eventually.
It's just helped Min fight.
Yeah.
Without being able to do that, just he wouldn't have had the cards here.
So here is a Reef that is saying the Reef is going to trade for two things, essentially. You know, you get to put a Tidebinder in front and Nowhere to Run it, but it is still a Death Toucher. So this is still kind of a, air quotes, 2-for-1.
Yeah, it's not bad. You lose a land, but you know you don't really need it.
Yeah, valued that instead of killing Kaito here.
Ooh, Reef for your own.
And now I bet we see the talent leveled up to get this town ain't big enough.
Let's Kaito get through, though.
Yeah, Kaito. Well, Kaito can be cast. You can still block it, so it was kind of the same as last turn.
Well, when does Min start attacking?
He's got to eventually with the clock, but
exactly. Like this is 3 minutes.
We don't necessarily know Mattia's clock as it's a little cut off there, but just by the way Mattia's playing, I would assume has a little bit more time, but gets Get Out instead. All right, looks like we got 5 minutes and 30 on Tia's clock as well, so about to hit that red pressure mark as well, so both players got to kind of put the pedal to the metal.
+1 doesn't protect this. It kind of does, I guess. You could chump, but I wouldn't expect that.
Yeah, +1's just okay. I would agree. Negative, tapping down Fear of Isolation, attack for 2, and then chump if the Reef comes back is pretty reasonable.
Don't mind. -2 is good. Look, the -2 stun this is such a good effect.
Yeah. Whew. This is going to come down to it, that's for sure. Goes for just the Surveil.
I mean, this is always good, too.
Yep. Let's see.
Bins.
Looks like bins, too. You know, there would also be the option, if you Surveil and you keep cards on top, you can animate that Reef and make them mill that cards as well. So that's a way to interact with it.
Oh, yeah. I wasn't even thinking about the mill. I don't think I've considered the mill effect for like 18 years at this point.
Yeah, okay, so one thing I'm thinking here that is an option is if you Get Out to return 2 enchantments, you can return your talent and a Storm Chaser's, the talent and a Nowhere to Run, and then during Mattia's upkeep, you can double Nowhere to Run the Kaido. I hope that's what we're doing. It would be such a gas of a play. Oh, no, it looks like we're not going for it as we played that, but that was an option. Minwin deciding to just pressure it instead. But another thing you can do is block with the Otter and Nowhere to Run it, you know, post after damage has been resolved. So, wow, just so
That's assuming it's not a
many-
+1, though.
Yeah.
I guess if there's the +1, you could use the nowhere to run pre-damage. Yeah.
You can +1 if you're Matea and then proactively go for the Throat the Otter.
Yeah.
I guess if you're going to +1 Kaido, you can just go for the Throat the Otter and then attack and then use the negative ability or the 0 ability. There's just always so many options in this mirror match that it's just incredibly fun to watch. But I think I still would have liked just nowhere to running this Kaido. I don't know if it would have been correct, but it would have been sweet. That's for sure. Okay. As this stands here, if I'm Minwin, I snap block with the Otter and then go to damage. Let it die. Don't try to get cute and play around a removal spell, and then still within combat, nowhere to run Kaido. Yes. Oh. Yeah, this isn't going to work as well because of the go for the Throat. But, of course, it's a random top deck, you know?
Yeah, he's got to worry about time as well.
Yup.
It's getting clocked.
Getting clocked, but now this allows Kaido to draw a card here, where if you just let damage resolve and then you deal with it, you know, Matea just says go. But yeah, the clock is coming into a huge effect now where Minwin just might not have the time to win even if he becomes ahead on the battlefield, which that's not even clear.
Trying to think of the biggest draws for Matea right now, and frankly, there's just so many of them. I mean, this is a big draw right here. Honestly, it's like just anything that puts something in play right now is a big draw. That's really the kind of the craziness, I think, of the mid-range deck, is that once you don't kill it, all of its draws become so big.
Yeah. Yeah, Kaido's snowball's out of control as well here, so wow, this has been an incredible game. And now, I mean, with another land off the top, things are starting to slip here from Minwin.
Yeah, 148. I don't know. I'm worried, Corey.
I'm worried too. You got nowhere to run to deal with Spyglass Siren. You have Fear of Isolation to kill Kaido. If you want, looks like we didn't go for that, but goes for the Reef. Yep. Now you can double attack at Kaido to deal with it. I think step one, you got to deal with that and then worry about dealing with the rest. But that also means Matea doesn't have to block here. Okay.
Oh, no!
It's a Reef at least, so you can kind of start pressuring, but now Minwin has the ability to attack for 6 and just has to. There's no more Storm Chaser's talent nonsense you can really do, I feel, with just the clock. Okay, that is huge. You can animate the Reef, attack for 6.
No, I think Min's comfortable here. I think he knows what's up.
I mean, it's only a minute. You can't be that comfortable. If Minwin
I think he's comfortable.
If Minwin had 3 minutes here, I think this game is over, you know, but as it stands here, I think I'm going Fear of Isolation, bounce the Storm Chaser's talent, get in some pressure, yep, attack, and then start just going off next turn, but I just don't know if we're going to have enough time.
Look, I'm worried too, okay? No, land.
Yeah, like this game is for sure over if Min has an extra minute and a half on the clock, for sure.
39 seconds.
Drowner 2. Get that creature animated. Level 2. Oh man, I just feel like you don't have time for this. Is that a go for the throat? Sure. Gets animated, go for the throat's ready to go. Takes 4 down to 11. Now we're gonna get under 10 seconds. If Matea has any draw, like a removal spell or something that just forces some attention, I don't feel like Minwin's gonna have the time, but if it's another land off the top, maybe we can get this going. Oh my.
Oh my gosh.
10 seconds. Animate the reef. There's the clock.
No! I can't beat the clock. You gotta have the time. You gotta have the time.
God. And I mean, yeah, you're 100% right. You know, time is a resource on Magic Online, just like, you know, managing your resources on the battlefield. You also have to manage that clock. And that is just so close. If you had 30 more seconds, Minwin takes that down. But as it stands, Matteo Rizzi wins in a very wild fashion and picks up the 1,250. That was insane.
Wow. That's look. There's a brutal way to lose.
That's a brutal way.
You're never going to be able to say otherwise. But
I feel like we can all take a breath.
There's a reason there's a clock. Okay.
Yeah.
There's a reason there's a clock.
Unreal. That was the match of the tournament for sure. Very well played by both players. And yeah, what can you do? I think at the end there, Min should have been focusing on animating the creature land. But the thing is, it's so easy for us to say when you don't have that clock ticking down. You need to act. You need to not think. You need to click some buttons. And Min was definitely making the correct plays when it comes to a perfect scenario. You know, like when the clock's not a factor. And but I don't know if you couldn't think the same when clock was indeed a factor there.
It's easier to say than do.
Yep.
That's really what it comes down to. Let's take a look at the top 8, see what we have lined up for us after this one. 6 rounds is what took place here. As you could take a look at the prizings that also stand with it right there with you. 6-0 for Mattia on this one. Blue-black mid-range, Dimir mid-range with this too. Using one of my favorite cards.
I mean, that deck was
bootleg
sweet.
Mystic Snake.
That deck was absolutely sweet, and I will say, you know, it definitely, with given the time, like I was saying, would have been a 5-1 deck along with Minwin, Caleb, and Connor. But also want to bring some attention to Caleb. Caleb went 5-1 with that sweet deck. Didn't see his loss, not sure, but you know, won 5 times with that Abzan Insidious Roots deck. What a great tournament here. That was so fun to watch.
Oh yeah, this was a ton of fun. Honestly, Insidious Roots. That was Obsidian Roots. Insidious Roots was very surprising to me how well that deck performed, especially against Domain. Of all the decks, like I thought that was for sure going to get swept as it came across it. But this is the first one that's happened so far this year of the MTGO Creator Showdown. We have 9 more this year, and next month is the second one that we're going to be having on March 15th, and it's going to be Modern. And that is a big turn of events now. You thought that Standard had a lot of decks in it. Modern has got even more. I feel like every single time I turn around, there's a deck that's dominating Modern. There's a second deck that's dominating Modern. But then there's 655,000 other decks that are available for play in Modern because it's got a number of cards that date all the way back to 8th edition, which are ancient relics that they're still digging up from the ancient Egypt times. So if you want to take a look at decks that are powerful and you want to find yourself some decks that are going to stick around for a long time, Modern's one of the formats you can do it with. March 15th is the place that you can do it with. And so Corey, I'm so glad you could join me here today. This has been a ton of fun. What do you have to say for us at the end of this tournament?
Yeah, just wanted to say that this was a blast commentating with you as well, Nathan. A lot of fun to watch these players play some high-level Standard right before the metagame will inevitably shift here before the Pro Tour next weekend. So big congrats to Matteo Rizzi, a well-deserving champion for sure, and can't wait to do it again. A lot of fun.
Thank you for joining us, Corey Baumeister, for everyone here at the production side of things, for all the players that were able to join and stream for us as well today. I'm looking forward to seeing what else develops here in Standard. So thanks, everyone, for joining us. March 15th, I'm hoping to see you there as well for Modern. Thanks for joining us here at the MTGO Creator Showdown. March 15th, once again, that final time. We'll see you there.